And Walking Through Ancient India with the Buddha, a Sleep Story for the Soul, Chapter 1. The Grove at the Edge of the World, Lumbini. You arrive before the dawn does. The path that brought you here is not marked on any map. It is the kind of path that appears only when you stop looking for it. A thread of bare earth winding through tall grass, through the soft sound of crickets, through the smell of wet stone and night-blooming flowers you cannot name. The sky above you is the color of ink slowly being diluted. Somewhere ahead, a grove of trees stands at the edge of a field, and the trees are very still. The air between them is the kind of air that makes you want to lower your voice without knowing why. You slow your steps, you breathe. This is Lumbini. The word itself is old, older than the languages most people alive today have ever heard spoken. Lumbini. Say it softly and it already sounds like something cupped in the hands. A garden, a pause, a place where the ordinary world agreed just for a moment to hold its breath. It is the 5th century before the Common Era. The land around you is part of what will one day be called the Terai, a long, low plain at the foot of the Himalayan foothills, a place where the air is thick in summer and silver in the cool months before the rains. The sal trees here are tall and deeply rooted. Their leaves catch what little moonlight remains and hold it like small mirrors. Beneath your feet, the earth is soft, not muddy, just yielding the way good earth yields when it has drunk well and rested long. Oh, there is a woman here. She is not young exactly, but she is not old either. She is at that still point between the two, the place where a person has shed most of their fear and not yet begun to shed their strength. Name is Maya. In Sanskrit, the word Maya means illusion, the veil that lies between what we see and what is. But that meaning will only become ironic later. Right now, she is simply a woman leaning gently against the smooth bark of a sal tree, and the expression on her face is one you recognize. It is the expression of someone in the middle of something enormous, trying to stay present. She does not cry out. That detail is worth noticing. In almost every account of this night, she does not cry out. She reaches up, and the branch of the tree comes to meet her hand, and she holds on, not desperately, but the way you hold on to something you trust absolutely. Stay with this for a moment, because what happens next is not loud, and it is not dramatic, and it does not announce itself with thunder or celestial fire. What happens next is simply this. A child is born in a garden, beneath a tree, while the last stars of the night are still visible above the canopy, and the first birds are beginning their first sleepy notes at the edge of the field. The child is born, and the sal trees, in the accounts that have come down to us across 25 centuries, are said to have bloomed, not in their season, not on any schedule, just bloomed because something in the world asked them to. White flowers opening in the dark, falling like slow snow, landing without sound on the wet grass below. And you do not need to decide whether this happened exactly as described. What you can feel, standing here in the half-dark, is the weight of the moment. Something is arriving. Something that will spend 80 years walking the dusty roads of this ancient land, speaking in the shade of trees, beside rivers, in borrowed courtyards and forest clearings. Anyone who had a question and a willingness to sit still long enough to hear the answer. But that is later. Right now it is only a child, small and new and breathing. The woman named Maya smiles. That too is in the accounts. There is something quiet happening here. The Chinese monk Faxian arrived at this grove 1,000 years after this night. He had walked from China, walked over mountains, through deserts, and across the high passes of the Pamirs, driven by a single desire, to see the places where the Buddha had lived and breathed and taught. When he reached Lumbini, he found the grove still standing, a little wilder, a little quieter than it had been. He found a stone pillar that Ashoka had placed here. Ashoka, the great emperor, who had come on pilgrimage 250 years after the birth, and had stood where you are standing now and wept, not from grief, from something that does not have a clean name in any language, the feeling of arriving at a place so old and so sacred that your own life suddenly seems both very small and very meaningful at the same time. Vaxian described the place in his record of travels. He described the pillar, the stream, the trees. He wrote that even in his time, the birds still gathered in the branches at dusk and did not leave until morning. The birds are here now. You can hear them settling. Hold this image gently, because in a few moments we are going to leave this grove and follow the child as he grows. Follow him out of the garden, into a palace, into a life of carefully arranged comfort, and then out of that too. We are going to walk every road he walked. We are going to sit beside every river he sat beside. We are going to meet every monk and merchant and grieving mother and skeptical king and frightened soldier who came to him with a question and went away carrying something they had not expected. But before we leave, there is something to say about this grove, about this moment, about the way the sal trees are flowering in the dark. This is not a story about a religion. This is not a story about robes and rituals and rules written down in old books. This is not a story about someone who lived so long ago and so far away that his life has nothing to do with yours. This is a story about a human being, a person who was born in a garden on a cool night, who grew up asking questions no one around him could answer, who walked out into the world with nothing but his own mind and his own willingness, and who found something, something real. Something that 25 centuries later is still being found by people sitting quietly in rooms, very much like wherever you are right now, breathing in the same way he breathed, carrying the same questions he carried. That is what this grove holds. That is what the flowers are for. There is a sal tree at the edge of the world. And one night, much later in this walk, under a different grove of sal trees at the far end of a long life, something will happen that we will need to have walked this entire road to understand. We will reach it. But the road there is long, and it is worth every step, and we are only just beginning. For now, rest here a little. Let the sound of the grove settle around you, the soft percussion of flowers falling. The first bird's note, a single clear sound, dropping into the silence like a stone into still water. Maya's breathing slow, and even now, the way breathing goes after something immense has moved through you and left you strangely calm. The child sleeps. The stars are going out one by one as the sky begins its slow, pale turn toward morning, and the world, the whole wide, dusty, complicated, beautiful world of ancient India, with its rivers and its kingdoms and its arguing philosophers and its wandering monks and its markets full of noise and color and smell. The whole world is about to change. It does not know this yet. You do. The air changes here, and in the years that followed this birth, the people of the surrounding villages would come to call this grove by its name, Lumbini, the Sanskrit word for a grove, yes, but also, in the older dialects of the region, something closer to the word for a beloved place, a place you return to, a place that stays with you after you have left. The Emperor Ashoka, standing here on his pilgrimage in the 3rd century before the Common Era, ordered a stone pillar erected in the ground beside the great tree. The inscription on that pillar in the Brahmi script of his time reads, "Here the Buddha, the Blessed One, was born." 20 words, or something very close to 20 words, depending on how you count the old syllables. 20 words pressed into stone, still readable today, still standing in the field. Because some truths do not require decoration. They require only witness. You are that witness now. Breathe in, breathe out. Notice what you feel right now. We will not stay here long. The child will grow quickly the way children do in stories in 7 league steps of time, until suddenly he is a young man standing at a window in a palace, looking out at a world his father has tried to keep from him. Feeling something stir in his chest that no amount of silk or music or carefully arranged comfort can quiet. But that is the next chapter. For now you are in a garden in the foothills of the Himalayas in the hour before dawn, the 5th century before the Common Era. Flowers are falling from the trees. A woman named Maya is resting against smooth bark. A child is breathing his first breaths of the air of this world. The world is very still. The world is very old. And somewhere in the roots of the sal trees, something ancient and patient is beginning, very slowly, like a root finding its way through stone, to wake. Chapter 2. The Palace and the Wall. Kapilavastu. You have just witnessed a birth that the world will spend centuries trying to understand. Now the child grows. Time moves differently in stories like this one. Not faster, not exactly. More like the way light moves through water, bending slightly so that what was far becomes near before you quite notice the distance closing. One moment the child is sleeping in the garden while flowers fall around him. And, without any sharp cut, without any announcement, he is a boy of 7, sitting beneath a rose apple tree at the edge of a plowed field, watching the farmers work in the afternoon heat. This moment matters. Stay with this for a moment. He has wandered away from the spring festival, the kind of festival that fills a childhood with noise and color and the sweet exhaustion of too much celebration. His father, King Suddhodana, rules the Shakya clan from the city of Kapilavastu, and the city is not large by the standards of the great kingdoms to the south, but it is prosperous and well-ordered, and the festival is everything a festival should be. There is music, there is laughter, there is the smell of cooked food drifting across the courtyard in warm waves. The boy has left all of it. He is sitting under the rose apple tree, the jambu tree, the pali, and the shade is very cool, and the field beyond him is brown and turned, and the farmers are bent over their work. He watches a bird land in the freshly broken earth and pull a worm from the ground and eat it. He watches this very carefully. He sits with his back against the bark of the tree, his legs crossed without effort the way children's legs cross, and he breathes, and something happens inside him that he will not be able to explain for many years. The breath slows, the mind quiets. A feeling arises, not happiness exactly, but something underneath happiness, and something that does not depend on the festival or the food or the company of other children. Something that was already there, waiting like water waiting at the bottom of a still well. He does not know what to call it. He is 7 years old, but the feeling stays with him. It will stay with him for his entire life. That first glimpse of a stillness that did not require any condition to exist. A stillness that the world, not with all its noise and beauty and pain, could not touch. Pay attention to this. A child under a tree watching a bird eat a worm, not breathing slowly in the afternoon shade. This is actually the first teaching of the story. Not a sermon, not a discourse with a title and a chapter number. Just a boy who sat still long enough to notice something that most people spend their whole lives running past. His father, when he found him, did not understand what he was looking at. He saw his son sitting quietly beneath a tree at the edge of a field. He called to him. The boy stood, brushed the grass from his robe, and walked back toward the festival. But the rose apple tree cast a shadow that did not move with the sun. The accounts say that the shadow held its shape long past the time it should have shifted. And the father, looking back, noticed and did not know what to do with what he noticed. This is the part that stays with you. His name in the world is Siddhartha, in Sanskrit, he who has attained his goal. The name itself is a kind of prophecy, a kind you only recognize in reverse, looking back from the far end of a life and understanding that the name was right all along. Just not in the way anyone expected. His father had been warned. A sage named Asita had come to the palace shortly after the birth, looked at the child, and wept. Not from grief. The crying of the very old sometimes looks identical to the crying of the very moved. He wept because he could see what this child would become, and he wept because he himself would not live to hear the teaching. He told Suddhodana, this boy will become one of two things. A great king who will unite the kingdoms of the earth, or a great sage who will liberate the minds of human beings. Suddhodana heard this and chose very deliberately to pursue the first possibility. Every arrangement of the palace, every silk curtain and trained musician and carefully selected companion was aimed at the same goal. Keep the boy engaged with the world. Keep the world beautiful. Keep the question from forming. He was not a cruel father. That is important to say. He was a frightened one. And frightened parents who love their children sometimes build very beautiful cages. Something deeper is moving underneath this. The years pass. Siddhartha grows into a young man of considerable beauty and considerable intelligence, and his tutors note again and again in ways they cannot quite articulate considerable stillness. He learns what he is taught. He learns it faster than his teachers expect, and then he sits with it in a way that makes his teachers slightly uneasy, as though he is doing something with the knowledge that they did not intend and cannot quite follow. He marries. Her name is Yasodhara, and she is by all accounts a woman of real intelligence and warm humor, and they love each other genuinely. They have a son, Rahula, whose name means fetter, a chain, a binding, and this name, too, will take years to understand. The palace provides everything. Music from trained musicians who play through the night so that sleep is always soft and sweet. Food brought on silver plates. Companions chosen for their beauty and their willingness to be cheerful. His father has ordered that no sick person, no old person, no dead body is to be visible within the walls. The world outside the palace gate has been arranged, as much as any world can be arranged, to look like a place where nothing ends and nothing suffers. Here is what the history books leave out. Siddhartha knows none. He may not know the specific fact of suffering, may not have seen a wasted body or a funeral pyre, but he knows the feeling of the wall. He has known it since he was 7 years old, sitting under a rose apple tree, watching the birds. He knows that there is something on the other side of all this arrangement, something his father is afraid of, and the knowing of it is its own kind of suffering. The dukkha of not knowing is still dukkha, a Sanskrit word dukkha, which you could translate as suffering, but which more precisely means the grinding, subtle unsatisfactoriness of things that do not hold still, things that cannot be made permanent no matter how much silk you drape over them. This feeling was already alive in him long before he saw its cause. Anicca, impermanence. Even the festivals end, even the music stops at dawn. And there is a question forming somewhere behind his eyes, slowly. The way a question forms when it has been suppressed for a long time. Like water finding the lowest point in any landscape, eventually, inevitably. Not. What does a prince give up that a beggar cannot? Hold that question gently. We will come back, comes the day his father should have known was coming and hoped would not. Siddhartha asks to go outside the city gate. He is a grown man, he has a right to ask. And Suddhodana, knowing he cannot refuse forever, agrees, but gives instructions. The road is to be cleared, the sick are to be kept indoors, the old people are to stay home. The dead are to be moved. He wants his son to see a world as clean and beautiful as the palace. And the world does not cooperate. An old man appears, or perhaps he was always there. The instructions simply failed to reach the right person in time. An old man leaning on a stick, moving slowly through the middle of the road, his body curved by decades the way old bodies curve, his face a map of everything time does to a face. Siddhartha sees him and turns to his charioteer, a man named Channa, and asks, what has happened to that person? Channa is loyal and practical and finds this question unexpectedly difficult. He answers honestly, that is old age. It happens to everyone. It will happen to you. It will happen to me, the chariot continues. Not. Something in Siddhartha does not. Notice what you feel right now. 3 times after this, Siddhartha goes out. 3 more rides through the city and its surroundings. And 3 more things appear that his father's instructions could not prevent. A sick person, running a fever, unable to stand without help. A dead body, carried on a wooden frame by mourners who do not try to hide their grief. And then, on the 4th ride, a wandering monk, thin, simply dressed, carrying nothing but a begging bowl, walking in the dust with the unhurried ease of someone who has put down something heavy and found that the world is lighter than they expected. The monk is not looking for anything in particular. He is just walking. But his face. Siddhartha watches the monk's face for a long time as the chariot passes, and what he sees on that face is the thing he has been trying to name since he was 7 years old under the rose apple tree in the cool afternoon shade. Not happiness, not contentment, something older than either of those, something that knows about the old man on the road and the sick person and the funeral and does not look away from any of it, and is somehow still, underneath all of it, unbroken. The chariot brings him home. He does not sleep that night. He sits on the edge of his bed in the silk and the lamplight, listening to the musicians play their careful, beautiful music, and he understands, for the first time with his whole body and not just his mind, that the wall is real, that everything inside it is temporary, that the question he has been carrying since childhood is not going to be answered by anything the palace can provide. His son Rahula is sleeping in the next room. Yasodhara's dark hair is spread across the pillow. The lamplight is warm and golden, and everything is exactly as it should be. He sits with this for a very long time. And here is what you already know, because you have been in some version of this room yourself. Not a palace, maybe, not silk curtains and court musicians, but a room where everything was arranged and comfortable and sufficient, and still some quiet voice at the back of your mind was asking a question that the arrangement could not answer. Some mornings you wake up and the world is giving you everything you asked for, and underneath the gratitude there is still that low hum of something unresolved, something that comfort cannot reach. That is dukkha. That is anicca. That is what the prince, sitting on the edge of his bed in the lamplight, is feeling. That is also what brings him, eventually, to the road. Something is shifting beneath the surface. If you ask what a prince gives up that a beggar cannot, the answer is not possessions. The beggar already knows the world is uncertain. The beggar has already made peace, or failed to make peace, with impermanence. And what the prince gives up is something much harder to surrender. The story, the possibility, the idea carefully maintained by walls and curtains and music, that if you simply arrange things correctly, the uncertainty can be kept at bay. A beggar does not have this illusion to begin with. A prince has been given it as a birthright and has been told it is wealth and has to choose deliberately, painfully, in full awareness of what he is doing. To put it down, that is the harder gift to release. That is what makes the road ahead so long. Night is still, and the musicians play, and the lamps burn low, and Siddhartha sits with all of this, with the old man on the road, with the monk's undamaged face, with the sound of his son breathing in the next room, and something in him that has been almost decided for a very long time draws one breath closer to decide it. He is not going to do it tonight. Tonight he is still in the palace. But the wall is visible now. Once you can see the wall clearly, you cannot unsee it, and somewhere beyond the wall the road is waiting, dark and dusty and very long, leading towards something that has no name yet. If you have a moment before sleep takes you, think of the question the rose apple tree asked, the one that a boy first heard at 7 and never quite put down. What in your own life has the quality of that still water at the bottom of the well? What is the thing in you that does not depend on any arrangement to exist? You do not need to answer now. The road will have time for that. Rest here a little. Let the lamplight dim. Let the music soften. The palace holds you tonight. But tomorrow, and tomorrow is coming, even in the best arranged lives, tomorrow, something changes. If this walk is speaking to something in you, stay with us. What we have not yet reached is the heart of it. There is a tree to the south and a river, and a moment of such stillness that the ground itself is said to have trembled, not from earthquake but from recognition. We will get there. We are only 2 steps into a very long road. Chapter 3. The night he left, the great departure. You have felt it, the moment you knew something had to change, not the moment you acted on it. The moment before that. The moment when the knowing became undeniable, when the quiet voice at the back of your mind stopped being quiet and you found yourself sitting very still in the middle of your life, understanding that the road ahead and the road you had been walking were not the same road anymore. He felt it on a moonlit night, standing at the edge of everything he knew. The palace is quiet in the way that large, well-managed places go quiet after midnight. Not silent exactly, but stilled. The guards have completed their rounds. The lamps in the outer corridors have been turned low. The musicians who play through the night to keep the sleep of princes smooth and sweet have drifted into their own half-sleep, their instruments resting in their laps, the last notes of the last melody still dissolving in the warm air of the hall. Siddhartha stands at the entrance of the room where his wife sleeps. He does not go in. He stands at the threshold and looks. Yasodhara is sleeping on her side, one arm curved around the small warm shape of their son. Rahula, the name means fetter, a chain, a binding, and Siddhartha gave him this name himself on the day the child was born, because he understood even then what the love of a child does to a person, how it anchors you, how it makes the world smaller and more precious and more terrifying all at once, how it gives you something so worth protecting that protection itself becomes the cage. He looks at them for a long time. There is a detail here worth sitting with. And in the accounts that have come down to us, and there are many accounts in many languages from many centuries, almost every version of this scene includes this. He does not touch them. He does not go in and hold his son one final time, the way you might expect a person to do before a long leaving. He stands at the door and he looks, and then he turns, and he walks away through the quiet hall toward the courtyard where his horse is waiting. Why does he not go in? Some scholars say it is because he was afraid that if he touched the child, he would not leave. That the weight of a sleeping child in your arms is the most anchoring thing in the world, and he knew his own weakness well enough to know that the anchoring would hold. Some say it is because he understood already, even then, that to wake Yasodhara would be to ask her to participate in her own abandonment, and that this was a cruelty he could not perform. Some say simply that he looked at them and saw that they were peaceful and did not want to break the peace. You can choose the reason that feels truest. All three are probably true at once. The heart, at moments like this one, is not simple. He crosses the courtyard. The moon is full and high, and the stone beneath his feet is silver white and very cold. He has asked Channa, his charioteer, the man who has driven him since childhood, the one who answered honestly when asked about the old man on the road. He has asked Channa to prepare the horse. Channa has done this. He stands now in the courtyard holding the reins of a horse named Kanthaka. White, large, not trained for speed and trained also for silence. And on Channa's face is an expression that is not quite grief and not quite loyalty and not quite fear, but some combination of all three that has no name because it only appears in moments like this one. Siddhartha mounts without ceremony, no armor, no sword, no provision for the road. He is wearing the clothes of a prince, and he will not be wearing them for long, but that comes later. He looks back once at the palace. The lamps are low. The walls are pale in the moonlight. Somewhere inside, Yasodhara and Rahula are still sleeping, still curved together in the warmth of the room he has just left, and the world they are sleeping in is the same world it was an hour ago, and they do not know yet that it has changed. Then, very slowly, something changes. Kanthaka steps forward. His hooves in the accounts are said to have made no sound. The gods in the older tellings cupped the horse's feet in their hands so that the stone would not ring and wake the sleeping palace. You can take this as poetry, as metaphor, as the kind of beautiful exaggeration that oral traditions use to say, this departure was careful. This departure was slow and soft and full of love and full of loss, and the last thing it wanted to do was cause more pain than was unavoidable. Channa walks beside the horse, holding the reins, his face turned down toward the road. They pass through the city gate. The road beyond it is empty and silver and very long. Let this settle. The Sanskrit poet Asvaghosha writing in the 1st or 2nd century of the Common Era, perhaps 500 years after this night, but drawing on traditions already centuries old, described this departure in some of the most beautiful verses in the Sanskrit literary canon. He wrote about the moonlight on the road, and he wrote about the sound of the horse breathing. He wrote about Channa's face and about the city asleep behind them, unaware of what it had just released into the world. There is a Pali word for what Siddhartha was doing in that moment, nekkhamma. It is usually translated as renunciation, but that translation loses something. Nekkhamma is closer to the act of putting something down. Something you have been carrying for a long time, something that felt like it was holding you up but was actually holding you in place. The English word renunciation suggests drama, a sacrifice, a grand gesture. Nekkhamma is quieter than that. It is the quiet of a hand opening, of fingers releasing their grip on something they had held so long the shape of it was worn into the palm. He was not throwing his life away. He was putting it down so his hands could be free for something he could not yet name. None. And alongside nekkhamma, there is another word that lived in that night, chanda, the deep motivating intention, the desire that is not grasping but orientation, the way a seed is oriented from the very beginning of its becoming, not toward the direction of light. Chanda is what makes a person walk toward the thing they must walk toward, even when they cannot see it clearly. Even when the road is dark and the destination has no address. Siddhartha had both of these in him on the moonlit road out of Kapilavastu. The open hand and the turning toward light. Something ancient is speaking. They reach the edge of the kingdom before dawn. There is a river here. Not the great rivers of the south, but a smaller one. Clear and quick, its surface catching the last of the moonlight in long silver ribbons. Siddhartha dismounts. He takes off the silk of his robe. He cuts his hair with his own knife. Not dramatically, not with ceremony, just the practical act of removing the marker of caste and rank and belonging. The hair falls into the grass beside the river, and the river does not notice, and the darkness does not notice, and nobody is watching except Channa, who is watching with the fixed attention of someone trying to memorize everything, because they know they will spend the rest of their life being asked about it. And a wandering ascetic passes on the road above the riverbank, one of the many wanderers who crisscross the landscape of ancient India with their ochre robes and their begging bowls and their air of having given the world serious thought and arrived at certain conclusions. Siddhartha calls to him. They exchange clothes. The ascetic walks away wearing silk, looking mildly bewildered. Siddhartha stands on the riverbank in patched ochre cloth, barefoot, his cut hair still wet from the river where he rinsed his hands. He is no longer a prince. He is not yet a teacher. He is something in between, which is the most uncomfortable thing to be, and also, as it turns out, the most necessary. He turns to Channa. The road does not explain itself, it only continues. What happens in this moment between Siddhartha and Channa is one of the quietly devastating passages in the whole long story. Channa, who has served him since childhood, who answered the question about the old man honestly, who led the horse through the sleeping city without a sound. Channa is told, very gently but very clearly, to go back. Take Kantaka, not go back to the palace, tell them what you saw. And Channa, practical, loyal, honest Channa, does not want to go. He argues, he offers to stay, he says he can be useful. He says that Yasodhara will need to hear this from someone who was there. He says everything a person says when they are trying to find a reason to stay near something they are being asked to leave. But the thing about Siddhartha in this moment is that his gentleness is also an immovable wall. He is not cruel, he is not cold. He does not dismiss Channa or minimize what he is asking. He simply does not change his mind. Channa takes the reins. Kantaka turns toward the city. The horse, in the older accounts, begins to cry. This too can be taken as poetry. What the poetry is saying is, even the animal understood what this separation cost. Nana leads the horse back toward Kapilavastu. He does not look back, or perhaps he does once, quickly, the way you look back at something when you know that looking will not help. and you cannot stop yourself anyway. Siddhartha watches them go until the sound of the horse's hooves fades into the pre-dawn stillness. Then he turns. The road opens in front of him, heading south and heading into the great wooded interior of the subcontinent where the teachers and the seekers and the arguers and the meditators and the ascetics all gather, somewhere between the royal roads and the forest paths, looking for the same thing by many different names. He walks. The sun comes up slowly behind him, sending his shadow long ahead of him on the road, and his shadow is the shadow of a man with no possessions walking towards something he does not have a name for yet, and it falls on the dust of the road like a blessing or a question or both. Most people walk past this without stopping. But you are not most people tonight. You are here on this road, watching him go, and what you feel standing here, if you let yourself feel it clearly, is not tragedy. Sorrow, yes. The particular sorrow of watching someone you love choose a hard road when an easier road was available. But underneath the sorrow, something else. Something that feels almost like relief. The relief of watching someone be true to the thing they are most deeply true to, even when it costs them everything familiar. You have known people like this. Maybe you have been this in some smaller, quieter version of the same choice. The moment you stopped pretending that the comfortable arrangement was enough. The moment you took a step that could not be taken back. Moment the palace was behind you, and the road was in front of you, and your hands were empty, and your feet were bare, and the world was enormous and uncertain and more alive than it had ever felt inside the walls. That feeling, that is Nekama. That is Chanda. That is the road. Behind him, the palace sleeps on for another hour before the morning routines begin. Yasodhara wakes first, as she usually does, and reaches for the warmth beside her, and finds the space empty and cool. And in the account of Asvaghosha, who wrote this with a poet's understanding of the exact quality of a specific grief, she does not cry out immediately. She lies still for a moment, her hand on the cool space, and understands. The morning is very quiet. Channa arrives at the palace gate with a white horse and no rider, and that in the end is the whole explanation. No note, no elaborate farewell. Just the empty saddle and Channa's face and the horse and the dust of the road still on all of them, and the sun now fully up and the whole city beginning its morning, and the birds loud in the trees and the world going on the way the world always goes on, regardless of what has just changed inside it. Rest in this for a breath, and because ahead of him on the road, though he does not know it yet, are 6 years of searching. 6 years of forests and teachers and an austerity so extreme it will bring him to the very edge of what a body can survive. 6 years of carrying the question further and further into the interior of himself, past every answer that is almost right, past every teacher who can bring him to a high place but not to the highest, and past every system and framework and explanation, until the only thing left is the question itself, stripped of everything that was not essential. And then, on the far side of all of that, a tree, a river, a seat of grass, and something opening. But that is the next step on the road. For now the morning is new. The road is long, and somewhere ahead of you, walking south in the early light with nothing in his hands and everything ahead of him, a man in patched ochre cloth is breathing the free air of the open world for the first time in his life. Let the sound of his footsteps carry you forward. Let the image of that road settle around you like the morning, set slowly, gently, without hurry. The walk continues. Chapter 4, The Forest Years, Ascetic Period, Uruvela Forest. He has left the palace. Now the real difficulty begins. Not the leaving, but the searching. This is the part of the story that is easy to skip over. The awakening under the Bodhi Tree is dramatic and luminous and has been painted 10,000 times in 10,000 colors on 10,000 walls. And the first sermon at Deer Park is clear and beautiful and has been memorized by millions of people in dozens of languages across 25 centuries. But the 6 years between the night he left Kapilavastu and the morning he sat down beneath the fig tree on the banks of the Niranjana River, these years are quieter and harder and in some ways more important than either of the famous moments that bracket them, because these are the years of the wrong answers, and you cannot understand what he found without understanding what he tried first. And the road south takes him into the heartland of the subcontinent, the great middle country, the Majjhima Desa, where the serious seekers have always gathered. This is a world thick with philosophy and argument and spiritual experiment. There are wanderers everywhere, ascetics sitting motionless on riverbanks for days at a time. No, debaters traveling from city to city, challenging anyone who will engage them. Communities of monks living under elaborate sets of rules, refining their practice the way a jeweler refines a stone, cutting away everything that is not essential until only the core remains. The air here smells of wood smoke and the river and the particular smell of people who have been thinking very hard for a very long time. And Siddhartha walks into this world with his beggar's bowl and his patched robe and his question. And the first thing the world offers him is a teacher. There is more to this than it first appears. His name is Alara Kalama, and he is not a fraud. This is important to say clearly because it would be easy to tell the story this way. The young seeker goes to inferior teachers, finds them wanting, moves on to discover the truth himself. No, but that is not quite what happens. Alara Kalama is a genuine teacher of genuine depth. He has students, many students, and he has developed a system of meditation that leads through sustained practice, not to a state he calls the realm of nothingness, a place inside the mind where the ordinary chatter of thought and sensation falls completely silent, and what remains is a vast, clear, open spaciousness. This is not nothing. This is remarkable. This takes years of dedicated practice to reach, and most people who try never get there. And the ones who do are changed by it in real ways. Now, Siddhartha sits with this teaching and practices it, and, to Alara Kalama's considerable surprise, reaches the state his teacher describes in a matter of weeks. Not months, weeks. As if the door that takes others years to find was already slightly open for him, waiting. Alara Kalama is delighted. He offers to share the teaching jointly, to lead the community together as equals. He is generous about it. There is no jealousy in him, no small-mindedness. He opens his hands and offers what he has built. Siddhartha thanks him sincerely and leaves, because the state he has reached, vast, clear, silent, spacious, ends, and he comes out of it and returns to ordinary waking consciousness. The question is still there. The suffering is still there. The old man on the road is still old. The dead body is still dead. The state of nothingness was a profound relief, but it was a relief the way sleep is a relief from pain. Real, necessary, restorative, and not a cure. When you wake, the pain has not gone anywhere, and it was only that you were not aware of it for a while. He needs something that does not end when the meditation ends. He keeps walking. Notice what you feel right now. The second teacher is named Uddaka Ramaputta, and he teaches a state even deeper than Alara Kalama's realm of nothingness, a state called neither perception nor non-perception, not which is so subtle that even the question of whether awareness is present or absent dissolves into something that has no clear answer. It is the highest rung on the ladder that the meditative traditions of his time have built, and Siddhartha reaches it. Again, very quickly, Uddaka Ramaputta is so impressed that he offers to step aside entirely, not to lead jointly, but to hand the whole community over. You are the teacher now. I have nothing more to give you. And Siddhartha, again, thanks him and leaves, because the same limitation applies in deeper form. The state is higher, more refined, more extraordinary, and it still ends. And when it ends, the world is still the world, and the suffering in it is still suffering. And the question has not been answered by going higher. It has only been asked from a more rarefied altitude. Here is where the road bends, and he makes a decision that will shape the next several years of his life, and that will shape, eventually, the whole of his teaching. He decides to go further than any teacher has taken him, and further than any system currently available to him. He is going to practice austerity, Tapas, the Sanskrit word for the heat generated by spiritual effort, the fire of discipline that burns away everything impure. He goes into the forest near Uruvela, beside the Niranjana river, and he begins. He is not alone. 5 other wanderers join him, serious practitioners who recognize in him a quality of commitment they want to be near. Names are Kondana, Vapa, Badia, Mahanama, and Asaji. 5 men sitting in the forest, watching Siddhartha practice the most extreme asceticism of his time. Convinced, they are witnessing the birth of something extraordinary. They are right about that. They are wrong about what the extraordinary thing will be. The austerities are recorded in the Majjhima Nikaya, in the Buddha's own words, decades later, describing to his disciples what he actually did. And he holds his breath until the pressure in his skull becomes so intense he describes it as a blacksmith driving an iron bar through his head. He reduces his food to a single grain of rice per day, then to nothing. His body, which begins as the well-fed body of a prince, becomes something else entirely. A body of jutting ribs and sunken eyes and skin gone pale and dry as old parchment, hanging on a skeleton so visible that a person could count every bone from across a clearing. There is a detail here worth sitting with. He does not do this carelessly. He does not do it because he enjoys suffering or because he thinks the body is evil or because he is punishing himself for the life of the palace. He does this because the logic of asceticism is coherent. If the mind is trapped by the body's demands for food and warmth and rest and comfort, then the way to free the mind is to remove those demands entirely. Reduce the body to the absolute minimum. Burn away every craving until what remains is pure awareness, untouched by physical need. The logic is coherent. The practice nearly kills him. He goes on for 6 years. 6 years in the forest. 6 years of the tapas, the burning. 6 years of Kandana and the others watching him, sitting near him, bringing him the little he would accept. 6 years of the Niranjana river flowing past, unhurried and unchanging, while the man on the bank becomes less and less of what he started as, and then comes the moment that changes everything. He is sitting by the river when he hears, from somewhere downstream, the sound of a music teacher on a boat instructing a student. The words float up to him through the warm afternoon air. If you tune the string too tight, it will snap. If you leave it too loose, it will not play. And the string must be tuned to the middle, not too tight, not too loose. He sits with this for a long time. This is the moment everything changes. Because in that simple instruction, meant for a lute, meant for a student of music, floating across the water with no particular intention of being heard by a starving ascetic on a riverbank, he hears the answer to something he has been circling for 6 years. The error of the palace was too loose. No resistance, no friction, no honest contact with the truth of impermanence. The error of the forest is too tight. The string pulled until it cannot vibrate, cannot resonate, cannot sing the middle way. Not the way between indulgence and austerity as a compromise between 2 bad options. The way that is neither, the tuning that allows the string to do the one thing a string is for. To sing, he looks at his hands. They are the hands of a person who has nearly not survived the last 6 years. They are trembling slightly, and here is the part that you need to sit with. Because it is the most quietly revolutionary moment in the entire story, he decides to eat. Not a small thing. Everything the ascetic tradition around him says that this decision means is, you have failed, you have given in, you have surrendered to the body's weakness. The 5 men watching him will see this as a betrayal of everything they have been practicing together, and he eats anyway. A young woman named Sujata comes to the riverbank that morning. She has been making an offering at a spirit tree nearby, a ritual she has performed for years, asking for a blessing on her household. She sees the thin figure by the water and takes him for the spirit of the tree itself, somehow made visible, and she offers him the bowl of milk rice she has prepared. It is rich and sweet and warm, and she has made it with real care. He accepts it. He eats it slowly, sitting by the river, while the five companions watch from a distance with expressions that shift from surprise to disbelief to something that looks very much like contempt. He has eaten. He has failed. He is like any other man. They leave, all five of them gathering their things and walking away down the road toward Deer Park at Isipatana, which is near the city of Benares, and several days' walk to the north, shaking their heads, disappointed, certain that whatever they were watching was not what they thought it was. They will appear in this story again, and this is the part nobody warned them about, that the moment they walked away in disappointment was the moment they were closest to what they had come to find. They will not know this for some time yet, and something deeper is moving underneath this. Siddhartha finishes the milk rice. He takes the bowl and sets it on the surface of the river and watches it drift downstream, spinning slowly, catching the light. In the tradition, this is said to be a kind of divination. He has decided that if the bowl floats upstream against the current, the awakening will come. The bowl turns on the water and slowly, impossibly finds its way upstream again. You can take this as poetry. What the poetry is saying is that something had already shifted. The decision to eat, the decision to stop pulling the string too tight. This was not a failure. This was the first note of the middle way, played softly on the banks of a river on an ordinary afternoon in the 6th or 5th century before the Common Era. He bathes, he rests, he lets his body begin very slowly to recover from 6 years of burning. Then he walks to the fig tree. He does not hurry. The accounts are clear about this. And he walks to the tree with the same unhurried step that the wandering monk had on the road outside Kapilavastu, the step of someone who has put down something heavy and found the world lighter than expected. He cuts grass for a seat. He arranges it beneath the wide canopy of the tree. He sits down facing east toward the direction of the coming dawn, and he makes a resolve. You have been here before in some way. Not this place. Not this particular riverbank, not this fig tree in this forest, in this ancient land, but the resolve itself. The moment when you stop trying every possible distraction and every possible system and every possible solution that is not quite the right one, and you sit down and you say, simply, quietly, without drama, that you are going to be still now and let what is true come forward. Every person who has ever sat down in genuine stillness knows this resolve. The depth varies. The conditions vary. The tree and the river and the grass seat are particular to one man in 1 century. But the stillness itself, that is not particular. That is what you share with him across 25 centuries of distance. And here, at this crossing point is where you feel it too, the moment of sitting down. Because you have walked through a palace and left it in the night. You have sat in forests of your own and pulled the string too tight. You have tried the systems and the arrangements and the careful constructions designed to keep the question at bay. And at some point in every life, if the life is lived honestly, you arrive at the fig tree, at the moment of sitting down, at the moment of deciding to be still and let what is true show itself. The tree is there, the river is there, the grass seat is arranged, and in the morning, what is true will come on. But there is a night to get through first, and in the night, before the truth comes everything that would prevent it. The voice that says you are not ready. The voice that says you have wasted 6 years. The voice that says go back to the palace, go back to the forest, go back to any of the familiar shapes of suffering that you at least know the name of. That voice is very old. It has a name in this tradition, Mara, and we will meet it properly in the next chapter. For now, rest here. You have walked a long way today. From the palace to the river, through 6 years of forest and fire and wrong answers, and the one right answer heard in a music lesson floating across the water. You have watched a man eat a bowl of rice and save his own life in the eating. Think, before you rest, of the moment in your own life when you stopped pulling the string too tight, when you understood, not from a book, not from a teacher, but from the body's own exhaustion, that the middle way is not a compromise, and it is the tuning that makes music possible. If you have found that tuning, even partially, even briefly, You already know something of what Siddhartha knew on the banks of the Niranjana River, watching the bowl drift upstream in the late afternoon light. The string is tuned, the night is coming, the tree is waiting, we are almost at the moment the whole walk has been building toward. Stay with us a little longer. Now, the dawn is not far now. Chapter 5, Beneath the Bodhi Tree, Bodh Gaya. You have walked with him through the forest, through hunger, through 6 years of searching. Now you arrive at the tree. The fig tree stands at the edge of a gentle slope leading down to the Niranjana River. It is not the largest tree in the forest. It is not the oldest. It has no particular marking, no sign that distinguishes it from the hundreds of other trees that line this riverbank in both directions. Their roots drinking from the same slow water, their canopies making the same soft sound in the same evening wind, and yet there is something about the way the light falls beneath it, something about the quality of the shade, not merely the absence of sun, but a presence of its own, a coolness that seems to come from somewhere deeper than shadow. You stand at the edge of it and feel the air change against your skin, and you understand without being told that this is a place where stillness has been accumulating for a long time, as if the ground itself has been practicing. He walks to the tree. He cuts grass, he arranges a seat, and he sits down facing east toward the direction where the sun will rise, and he closes his eyes. The night begins. Pay attention to this, because what happens between the moment he closes his eyes and the moment the morning star appears in the pre-dawn sky is not a single dramatic event. It is not a vision or a visitation or a voice from above. It is a process, long, yet profound. The way the turning of a season is a process rather than a moment, even though we tend to remember it as a moment. The first warm day after a long winter, the first frost after a long summer, moment the star appears. But before the star, there is Mara. In the old accounts, Mara is described as a deity, a god of sensory existence, a lord of the realm of desire, who arrives with armies and terrifying forms and every weapon in the arsenal of fear and temptation. Elephants, storms, beautiful women, soldiers with flaming spears, the dramatic imagery of a tradition that knew how to paint its truths in colors visible from a great distance. But here is what Mara actually is. Mara is the voice that says, you are not ready. Mara is the voice that says, look at you, a failed ascetic, a runaway prince, a man who ate rice porridge from a young woman's bowl and let 5 serious practitioners walk away in disgust. What makes you think you have anything that the great teachers Alara Kalama and Uddaka Ramaputta did not already have and still could not find? Mara is the voice that says, go back to the palace, to the forest, any of the familiar shapes of struggle that you at least know the name of. Go back to the world that makes sense. Go back to the suffering you understand. Every person who has ever sat down in genuine stillness knows this voice. It is very old and very fluent, and it knows exactly which words will land with the most weight. It does not shout. It does not need to. It simply speaks in the tone of reason, in the register of common sense, and it says, this is foolish. You are not enough. The thing you are looking for is not here, and here is what Siddhartha does. He reaches down and touches the earth, that is all. He extends his right hand, fingers pointing downward, and he touches the ground beneath him, the actual ground, the actual earth, the ground that has been here longer than any dynasty or any teaching or any empire, the ground that holds everything that has ever lived and died and returned, the ground that is still here after every flood and drought and war and century. He calls the earth to witness, not a god, not a scripture, and not a teacher's endorsement or tradition's approval. The earth itself, the ground beneath the grass seat, the ground beneath the river, the ground beneath the palace and the forest and the roads between them, the ground which has been witness to everything that has ever happened and does not require any of it to have been different. The earth in the older accounts responds. It trembles, not violently, not with destruction, but the way a bell responds when you strike it, a resonance, a recognition. Yes, I have witnessed this. And Mara, the voice, the resistance, the deep pull of the familiar, falls silent. Something is shifting beneath the surface. Night deepens. The river moves. The stars complete their slow wheel overhead, the great constellations of the Indian sky turning around the still point of the north as they have turned since before there were eyes to watch them. And he goes deeper. The accounts in the Majjhima Nikaya describe what happens next in careful, the language of someone reporting from the inside of an experience that language was not originally designed to carry. He enters the first level of meditative absorption, then the second, then the third, and the fourth. A state of such purity and equanimity that the ordinary distinction between the one who meditates and the meditation itself begins to dissolve, the way the line between river and bank dissolves at the height of the flood. From that depth of stillness he begins to see, not visions, not hallucinations, something closer to what happens when a lens is cleaned and the light that was always there is suddenly for the first time unobstructed. In the first watch of the night he sees his own past lives, thousands of them, not as a punishment or a fascination, but as a recognition. The long chain of becoming, life after life after life, the same patterns arising and passing, the same reaching and losing, the same search returning in different forms under different names in different centuries. He sees the shape of samsara, the wheel of conditioned existence from the outside for the first time. In the second watch, he sees this for all beings, not just himself. The vast breathing web of existence, every creature that has ever lived and died and been born again according to the conditions of its actions, its intentions, its understanding. He sees it with a compassion that is not pity and not sentiment, but something more precise. The clear-eyed recognition of a doctor who understands the disease and is not frightened by it and knows suddenly that there is a cure. In the third watch, the deepest watch, the watch that ends just as the darkness begins to thin at the eastern edge of the sky, he sees the Four Noble Truths. There is suffering. This is not a pessimistic statement. No, it's a diagnosis. The first honest look at the actual condition of conditioned existence. The dukkha that pervades not just the great catastrophes of a life, but its ordinary texture, a subtle unsatisfactoriness of things that will not hold still. There is a cause of suffering, not the world's cruelty, not fate. The cause is craving, the reaching, the grasping, a deep habitual tendency to demand that things be other than they are, to insist on permanence where there is only change. There is an end of suffering, not after death, not in some other realm, here, in this mind, in this life. The cause can be removed, the grasping can be released, the string can be tuned. There is a path, not a ladder to somewhere else, a way of living, of seeing and intending and speaking and acting and practicing that leads, step by step, to the end of the unnecessary suffering that the mind creates for itself. The morning star appears. It rises slowly, the way the morning star always rises. Not dramatically, not with any announcement, just brightening gradually above the horizon until you realize it has been there for a while and you only just noticed. The sky is that particular color that has no name, not night and not dawn, a color that exists only in the few minutes between. Birds that sleep in the forest canopy begin to stir. The river catches the first suggestion of light, and here is where it gets remarkable. That moment, in the moment of the morning star, in the moment when the last of the night's resistance released and the seeing was complete, there is a record in the old texts of what he said, or something close to what he said. The words have been translated and retranslated and carried across languages and centuries like a flame passed from lamp to lamp, losing a little of each original lamp in the passing but never going entirely out. He said something like this: "Seeking the builder of the house, I have run through countless lives, suffering birth again and again. House builder, you have been found, you shall build no more. Your rafters are broken, your ridgepole is destroyed. My mind, set free, has reached the end of craving. The house is the self, the constructed self, the one built from habit and assumption and the long accumulated weight of craving. The builder is the craving itself, and he had found it, not to punish it, not to destroy it with force, simply to see it clearly. Because what is seen clearly in the full light of awareness cannot continue to operate in the dark. The house that craving builds requires darkness to stand. Now there was light, the Bodhi. The word means awakening, but also simply knowing. The knowing that is not belief and not opinion, but direct, clear, unobstructed seeing. He had it, not as a possession, not as a trophy, as a condition of the mind, a condition that, once reached, is stable, not because it is rigid, but because it is grounded in something that does not change. No, the way a tree is stable, not because it is stone, but because its roots go deep enough. He sat for some time after the star appeared. How long is not recorded with precision. Long enough for the morning to fully arrive. Enough for the birds to begin their proper morning chorus, loud and unself-conscious, the way birds sing when they have not been told they should be quiet. And somewhere on this morning, in a deer park to the north, near the city of Benares, 5 men are beginning their day. They are doing what they have done every morning for years, sitting in their practice, maintaining their discipline, living the life of serious seekers with serious commitment. They do not yet know what has happened at the fig tree by the river. They do not know that the man they walked away from in disappointment, the man who ate the rice porridge and seemed to them to have surrendered, has just found the thing they were all looking for. The 5 men who left him will return, but not the way you might expect. Not yet, but soon. Let that settle, because right now, in this dawn at this tree beside this river, there is a man sitting in the grass whose mind has just come to rest in the way that the accounts suggest no human mind had come to rest before in exactly this way. Not the rest of sleep, not the rest of unconscious absorption, the rest of complete, clear, open seeing. Eyes that are open because they no longer need to be closed against anything. The Mara, the voice, the resistance is gone, not because it was defeated in combat, and because it was seen through, because when the light came there was nothing for the shadow to cling to. The tree stands above him. The same fig tree it has always been, roots in the same ground, canopy making the same sound in the same morning wind. Nothing about it has changed, and yet sitting beneath it, everything has. This is not a miracle in the sense of something that breaks natural law, and this is a miracle in the older sense, something that reveals what was always true, suddenly visible because someone looked at it without flinching, without turning away, without adding anything to it or taking anything from it. And what was always true, that the mind unclouded is clear, that suffering understood is not a life sentence, that the house can stop being built, that the string can be tuned, that the path, the actual road, walked with actual feet through actual forests and actual cities and actual grief and actual joy, leads somewhere real. He has found it. Now he has to figure out how to give it away. Notice what you feel right now, not what you think about this, what you feel. Because if something in you has gone quieter in the last few minutes, if the breath has softened a little, if the space between thoughts has opened a fraction, that is not nothing. That is the same quality of stillness that the fig tree offered him. Diluted across 25 centuries, filtered through language and translation, and the imperfect medium of a voice in your ears, but the same quality. No stillness, no stillness. Across any distance, rest here for a moment beneath this tree. Let the morning come around you. Let the birds be loud. Let the river move. The teaching has not yet been spoken. That happens at Deer Park, several days' walk from here, when 5 disappointed men look up from their practice and see a figure walking toward them across the grass, and something in his face makes them stand. We will reach that moment. Our road continues north, but here, just now, in the early morning at the edge of a river in ancient India, where the ground is still cool and the grass is wet, and a man sits under a tree in the full brightness of what he has just found. Here is where you breathe. Here is where the walk becomes something else, not a search anymore, a return. Chapter 6. The first words, Deer Park, Isipatana Sarnath. He has awakened. Now comes the harder question, can this be shared? This is the question that stops him for several days beneath the tree. Not doubt about what he has found. The finding is complete. as complete as anything can be, as settled as the ground beneath the fig tree's roots, as clear as the morning star that rose over the river while the birds were waking. The question is not whether the awakening is real. The question is whether it can be carried from one mind to another, whether the thing he has seen, which is not a belief, not a doctrine, not a set of rules to be memorized and followed, but a direct seeing, a condition of the mind arrived at through a specific kind of looking, whether that can be pointed to in words that another person can follow. He sits with this question the way he sat with the asceticism and the teachers and the long forest years, fully, without rushing toward an answer, without pretending to a certainty he has not yet earned. And the conclusion he arrives at is quiet and serious and a little frightening. This is going to be difficult to explain. Not impossible, but difficult, because the thing he is trying to point to is not located in any external place, not a mountain you can give directions to. It is not a text you can hand someone and say, read this and you will understand. It is the nature of the mind itself, seen clearly, and to see it clearly requires the same quality of attention he brought to the grass seat beneath the fig tree, the same willingness to sit with what is actually present rather than what we wish were present, the same patience with the slow process of letting the muddy water settle until it is clear. You cannot make the water clear by stirring it harder. You cannot force the settling. You can only stop stirring and wait and trust that clarity is the water's natural condition when it is left alone. Can he teach people to stop stirring? He decides eventually that he can try, that the world has people with enough wisdom and enough genuine suffering to hear what he has found and follow it, that the teaching is worth offering even if only a few can receive it, that silence here would be the greater failure. He stands up, he begins walking north. The road does not explain itself, it only continues. And the walk from Bodh Gaya to Isipatana, the deer park outside the city of Benares that will later be called Sarnath, takes several days. The road follows the river for a while and then climbs slightly into drier country, and the dust is finer here and the heat of the day comes earlier and stays later. He walks in the early morning and rests in the midday shade and walks again in the late afternoon when the air begins to cool. He meets a wanderer on the road, a man named Upaka moving in the opposite direction, who notices something in the figure approaching him, something in the quality of the walk, the quality of the face, and stops and asks, "Who is your teacher? What tradition are you following?" The answer Siddhartha gives him is one of the most extraordinary sentences in the whole long archive of this story. "I have no teacher. I am awakened by myself alone. I have no equal in the world." Upaka considers this for a moment, nods slowly, the nod of someone who has decided diplomatically not to argue, and walks on. It is possible he thought the figure on the road was simply another wanderer with an inflated sense of his own attainment. The road was full of those. It is also possible he felt something in the encounter that he did not have the framework to name, and carried it with him for the rest of his life without knowing what to do with it. The road does not always explain its meetings, and sometimes it simply passes them on. Pay attention to this. After several days, the deer park comes into view. Xuanzang, the Chinese monk who made the pilgrimage to India in the 7th century of the Common Era, described Isipatana in his travel record with the specificity of someone who wanted to miss nothing. He described the stupa that had been built to mark the spot of the first teaching. He described the community of monks who lived there in his time. He described the deer, the actual deer, still grazing in the grass of the park after 10 centuries, unhurried and unafraid, because this has been a refuge for living things since before any of them were born. The deer are here now. You can see them at the edge of the meadow, moving in the slow, particular way of animals that have never been hunted. The grass is long and green after the recent rains, and the late afternoon light is the color of the inside of a mango, and everything is very still. And across the meadow, 5 men sit in their practice. They see him from a distance. The 5, Kundana, Vapa, Badia, Mahanama, Asaji. These are the men who sat with him in the forest for years, who watched him fast until he was bone and skin and pale, dry parchment, who believed they were witnessing the birth of something extraordinary. These are the men who watched him accept a bowl of rice porridge from a young woman at the river and walked away in disappointment and disgust. They have been practicing here at Isipatana for some time. They have continued their discipline without him. They have not forgiven him for what they saw as a surrender. And now they see him walking toward them across the grass. The decision they make, and they make it together quickly in the few minutes before he arrives, is to ignore him, to not rise in greeting, to not offer the traditional courtesies one practitioner offers another. He has broken his practice, broken his discipline, broken their shared commitment. He deserves no particular welcome. They will let him sit if he wishes. They will not treat him as a teacher. This is a completely reasonable decision based on everything they know. Here is the part that still puzzles the scholars. They cannot hold it. He is still 50 meters away, 60, still crossing the long grass of the meadow in the late afternoon light, and something is happening to the decision they made. It is not dissolving exactly. It is more that it is becoming difficult to remember why it seemed important. Something about the way he walks. Something about the quality of the face at this distance, which they cannot even see clearly yet, but which is nevertheless communicating something that their bodies are receiving before their minds have processed it. One of them stands, then another. And by the time Siddhartha reaches the edge of where they are sitting, all 5 are on their feet, and they are taking his robe and offering him water and preparing a seat and doing every courteous thing they had agreed they would not do. And they are doing it without quite knowing why. The way you sometimes find yourself behaving with more kindness than you planned because something in the moment asked it of you and you did not resist the asking. He sits, he looks at them. Something ancient is speaking. He says, I have found it. And these 5 serious, disciplined, intelligent men who have every reason to be skeptical do not dismiss this because whatever the face is doing in this moment cannot be categorized as delusion or arrogance or the gentle madness of someone who has pushed themselves too far. It is something they have been looking for their whole practicing lives. And here it is sitting across from them in the late afternoon shade of a deer park, looking back at them with an attention so complete that each of them, separately, feels for a moment like the only person in the world. They sit down, they listen, and he begins. The first teaching is not long, it is not complicated. No, it will eventually be written down in a sutta called the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the discourse on setting the wheel of Dhamma in motion. And it will be memorized and chanted and studied and debated and translated into every major language on earth. On the afternoon it is first spoken, in a deer park in the summer, with actual deer grazing at the edge of the meadow, and the smell of the recent rain still in the grass. It is simply a man explaining to 5 other men what he has found. He tells them about the middle way, the string tuned neither too tight nor too loose, the path between the palace and the forest, between indulgence and austerity, between the 2 extremes that both, in their different ways, miss the point. He tells them about dukkha, the unsatisfactoriness, the subtle grinding friction of existence as it is ordinarily lived, not as a counsel of despair but as a diagnosis. The first step in addressing any condition is naming it honestly. He tells them about the cause and the end and the path. The deer at the edge of the meadow have stopped moving. They are standing with the particular stillness of animals that are listening to something they cannot name but recognize. And here is where the road bends. Watch what happens on Kundana's face. Kundana is the eldest of the five. He has been practicing the longest. He has the most accumulated experience, the most refined understanding, the most carefully developed insight. He is listening to the teaching with the quality of attention that only comes from years of training the mind to be still and receptive and honest. And at a certain point in the teaching, no one has ever been able to identify exactly which sentence it is, which turning of the argument, which particular word falling in which particular order. At a certain point, something happens on Kundana's face. Not a dramatic change, not tears or exclamation or any of the visible gestures that mark a conversion or a crisis. Something quieter than all of those. A settling, a way a face settles when it stops bracing against something it has been bracing against for a long time without knowing it. He sees it, he understands it. Not all of it. Understanding deepens over time, and there is much still to understand. But the first seeing, the first genuine glimpse of the path, it is there, clear and real and unmistakable. The Buddha looks at him and says, Anna knows. Kundana truly knows. Anna Kundana. In the Pali, the prefix Anna means one who knows. The name is a recognition, a bestowing, an acknowledgement in 2 syllables of what just happened on that face in the late afternoon light. From this day forward, the tradition knows him as Anna Kundana, the one who knows. The first person to understand the Dhamma, not a scholar, not a king, not a philosopher with a formal education, a wanderer in a deer park who sat still long enough to let the teaching land. Let this settle. The other 4 will follow, not all at once. Over the next several days, as the teaching continues and the practice deepens, each of them arrives at their own first seeing, their own version of the face settling. By the end of the week, all 5 have entered what the tradition calls the stream, the Sotapanna, the stream enterer, the one who has glimpsed the path clearly enough that the direction is now known and the arrival is only a matter of time, like a river that has found the sea and is moving toward it even when it seems to bend the wrong way. The wheel of the Dhamma has been set in motion, and the Sangha, the community, the third of the 3 jewels alongside the Buddha and the Dhamma. The Sangha begins here, in this meadow with these 5 men, this late afternoon that smells of rain and grass and the particular clarity that follows a long search when the search finally ends. The word Sangha comes from a root meaning to come together, to assemble, to gather. It is not a hierarchy. It is not an institution, though it will become one. In its original form here in this deer park, it is simply what happens when people who are genuinely seeking the same thing find themselves in the same place, sitting in the same direction, moved by the same teaching. 5 men, 1 deer park. Now, one evening that is already the most important evening in the history of this tradition, though none of them would use those words. They would use simpler words. They would say, we understand something now that we did not understand this morning. Let us practice. Let us continue. This is where the Dhamma becomes more than one person's finding. This is where it becomes something that can be shared, that has been shared, is being shared. Across 25 centuries and 50 countries and 100 languages, all the way to wherever you are tonight, breathing in the dark, walking this road in your own way. The deer in the meadow have gone back to their grazing. The evening light is doing what evening light does, going golden, going long, and filling the spaces between things with a warmth that makes the world look like it is being seen through the eyes of someone who loves it very much. 5 men sit in the grass of a deer park outside the city of Benares, and the teaching is moving between them, like a current in a river, like light through an open window, like a flame passed from one lamp to another without the first flame being diminished in any way. There is one more thing. On a road not far from here, perhaps 2 days' walk, perhaps 3, 2 men are about to have a conversation that will change the Sangha in ways that even this evening cannot yet imagine. 2 friends who have not yet heard a single word of the teaching. 2 friends who made a promise to each other on a hillside that we have not yet heard about. Their names are Sariputta and Moggallana. We will reach them soon. But tonight, rest here in the deer park. Let the evening settle around you like the teaching settles. Not all at once, not with any urgency, but gradually, the way understanding always comes when it comes honestly. First a glimpse, then a direction, then the slow, unhurried movement of a river that knows where it is going. You are in the stream now, the sea is not far, sleep well. Chapter 7. Two friends on a dusty road, Rajagaha. By now you have walked from the palace to the riverbank, from the forest to the deer park, on. But the hardest part of this story, the part that asks the most of you, is not the awakening, it is what happens after, when the teaching begins to move through the world on its own, carried by ordinary people on ordinary roads, changing everything it touches. Watch carefully what happens next, because what we are about to witness is not a miracle in any supernatural sense. It is something rarer than that. It is the moment a single sentence, spoken quietly on a dusty road by a man who was simply walking from one place to another, changed two lives so completely that the world of this teaching would never be the same after it. The city of Rajagaha is not a quiet place. It is the capital of Magadha, one of the great kingdoms of the Gangetic Plain, and it sits in a bowl of hills that turns the summer heat back on itself and fills the air with the smell of cooking fires and animals, and the particular dense human smell of a city that has been inhabited for a very long time. Roads into Rajagaha come from every direction, and they carry merchants and monks and soldiers and pilgrims and philosophers and wanderers of every kind, all of them moving through the same dust in the same heat toward whatever the city holds for them. On one of these roads, on an ordinary morning some weeks after the Deer Park teaching, a young man named Asaji is walking. You have met him. He was one of the 5 at Isipatana. One of the men who stood when he had decided not to stand, who listened when he had decided not to listen, who understood in the end what Kandana understood first. He is walking now with the particular quality of movement that the recently awakened carry. Not fast, not slow, not hurried toward anything or away from anything. Simply present to the road in the morning and the dust and the weight of the begging bowl in his hand. He is not trying to teach anyone. He is simply going about the morning's alms round. There is something quiet happening here. And on the same road, walking in the opposite direction, is a young man named Upatissa. He will later be known by another name, Sariputta. But on this morning, he is simply Upatissa, 20-something years old, and intelligent beyond what most people can comfortably be around, and carrying a question that has been with him since adolescence. He is the son of a Brahmin family of considerable standing, which means he has grown up surrounded by the best philosophical education his tradition offers, and the education has been excellent, and it has not answered the question. The question is the same question it always is, underneath all the other questions. What is this? What is the nature of existence? Is there a way through the suffering of conditioned life that does not require pretending the suffering is not there? And he has a best friend named Kolita, who will later be known as Moggallana, and they have been searching together for years. They have sat with teachers. They have debated in the assembly halls. They have followed systems and rejected systems and followed new ones and rejected those too. They made a promise to each other on a hillside some months ago. Whoever finds the answer first tells the other immediately. No delay, no ego about the discovery. Just come running. They have not found it yet. On this ordinary morning on this dusty road into Rajagaha, Upatissa sees Asaji walking toward him. Let the image settle before we move on. And because here is what he sees. Not a scholar, not a famous teacher surrounded by disciples, just a monk in patched ochre cloth carrying a begging bowl, walking with a quality of ease that Upatissa, who has studied ease, who has practiced ease, who knows what cultivated calm looks like, recognizes immediately as something different from cultivated calm. This is not a person who has trained himself to appear peaceful. This is a person for whom peace is at this moment simply the accurate description of what is happening inside him. Upatissa stops. He waits until Asaji has finished his alms round. because you do not interrupt a monk's alms round. This is basic courtesy, and Upatissa is nothing if not capable of patience when something matters enough. He waits, and then he approaches. "Who is your teacher?" he asks. "What teaching do you follow?" Asaji's answer is one of the most honest things in this whole story. He says, "I am new to this path. I have not been practicing long. I cannot explain the teaching in detail. I can only tell you a little." "Tell me a little," Upatissa says, and Asaji speaks. The verse he offers, and it is just a verse, 4 lines, the kind of thing you could say in the time it takes to cross a road, has been called the heart of the Dhamma in miniature. Every translation differs slightly, but it moves like this: of things that arise from a cause, the awakened one has told their cause, and their cessation too. This is what the great monk teaches, that is all. 4 lines on a dusty road. The answer is already here. You may not see it yet, but Upatissa sees it. In those 4 lines, the thing he has been circling for years, through the philosophy and the teachers and the long debates and the careful systems, suddenly has a shape, not a belief, not a doctrine to be accepted, a method, a direction. Things arise from causes. If you understand the cause, you understand the arising. If you understand the arising, you understand the cessation. Everything that comes into being can cease to be. The suffering that feels permanent, now fixed without remedy, it arose from causes, which means it can cease when those causes cease. This is not abstract to Upatissa. This is the most practical thing anyone has ever said to him. On Upatissa's face, at this moment, something happens. The same settling that happened on Kandana's face in the deer park. The same quieting of something that has been bracing for a long time. He has entered the stream, Sotapanna. Stream enterer, right here, on this road, with the city of Rajagaha going about its mourning behind him, and the dust of the road on his sandals, and the sun still climbing, and everything completely ordinary. The most important moments very rarely announce themselves. He thanks Asaji. He asks where the teacher can be found. Asaji tells him, "The bamboo grove outside the city, where King Bimbisara has offered a garden for the Sangha to stay during the rain's retreat." Upatissa thanks him again and turns and does not walk back toward Rajagaha. He runs. Most people walk past this without stopping. But consider what is happening here. This is a man of considerable education and considerable pride, the kind of person who has spent years in the best philosophical circles of his time. Who is accustomed to being the sharpest mind in any room he enters, and he is running down a dusty road in the morning heat, bowl bouncing, robe collecting dust, running because someone spoke 4 lines to him, and he has to find his best friend right now. He finds Kolita. He looks at him. Kolita looks back and immediately knows. This is how it works between people who have been searching together for a long time. The finding shows on the face before the mouth has formed the words. The Dhamma has been found, Upatissa says, and they go together to find the teacher. 2 friends made a promise on a hillside and kept it the same afternoon. Here is the part nobody warned them about. When they arrive at the bamboo grove, the Buddha looks at them and he says, "To the monks who are with him, to the small community that has been gathering around the teaching since the deer park," he says, "these 2 who are coming will be my chief disciples. Not because of their birth, not because of their education or their family standing or the number of years they have spent in practice, and because of the quality of what they are carrying toward him at this moment. The quality of a mind that has been genuinely searching and has just genuinely found the direction and is moving toward it with everything it has. Sariputta will become foremost in wisdom, the one who can take the teaching and unfold it in every direction, who can answer any question from any angle, who can find in a single sentence the entire architecture of the Dhamma and lay it out for anyone who needs to see it. Not. Moggallana will become foremost in what the tradition calls psychic powers, but what this means in practice is something more like the ability to meet people exactly where they are, to see what a person needs and offer precisely that, to be present to suffering in a way that is neither overwhelmed by it nor distanced from it. They are the 2 wings of the bird. the wisdom that sees clearly, the compassion that responds accurately, and they were found on a dusty road outside Rajagaha by a monk who was simply walking to breakfast. Stay with this for a moment. And because here is what neuroscience, 25 centuries later, in laboratories very far from this road, has been quietly confirming about what just happened. And the thing Asaji modeled for Upatissa on that road was not merely information. It was a way of being in the world, a nervous system organized around clarity and equanimity rather than around the management of threat. And human nervous systems, it turns out, do not learn this primarily from instruction. They learn it from contact, from being in the physical presence of someone whose system is already organized this way. The researchers call it co-regulation. The monks might call it the power of good company. In Pali, Kalyanamitta, the beautiful friend, the spiritual friend. The idea that a significant part of how we change is simply by being near someone who has already changed in the direction we are moving. That proximity to genuine peace is itself a form of teaching. This is why the Sangha is the third jewel. Not a bureaucracy, not an institution. A community of people who are practicing the same direction, whose nervous systems are slowly, through sustained contact and shared practice, learning a new way of being in the world from each other. Asaji was not trying to teach Upatissa. He was simply walking, and the walk was the teaching. The road does not explain itself, it only continues. In the weeks that follow, a community at the bamboo grove grows. People come from the city, merchants and scholars, and the curious and the desperate and the genuinely hungry for something they cannot find in the ordinary world. King Bimbisara himself has already come and offered his garden and pledged his support, having recognized in the teacher at the bamboo grove the young man he met years ago on the road outside Rajagaha, before the forest years, before the awakening. The young prince who had left his kingdom and who Bimbisara had offered to share his own kingdom with, and who had declined, and who had promised to return when he had found what he was looking for. He has returned, he has found it. The king sends food and robes and the practical support of a sovereign who has decided to put his weight behind something he believes in. The Sangha does not ask for this. No, it receives it with gratitude and without attachment, and continues its practice. Because the teaching is not about gratitude toward kings. The teaching is about the nature of the mind, available to everyone, regardless of what any king decides to do. Something is shifting beneath the surface. In a city to the northwest, in the great city of Savatthi, capital of the kingdom of Kosala, a wealthy merchant named Anathapindika is hearing stories about the teacher in the bamboo grove. The stories are traveling the way good stories travel, from mouth to mouth along the trade roads, and accumulating detail as they go, losing some accuracy and gaining something else. A quality of aliveness, of something that cannot quite be contained in factual description. Anathapindika has questions of his own. He has wealth and he has generosity. Those two qualities do not always appear together, and in him they are genuinely combined. He is already known for his care of the poor, which is how he got the name Anathapindika, feeder of the helpless. He is the kind of person who, when he hears about something real, wants to be near it. He will come. We will meet him in the next part of this walk, in the city of Savatthi, in a garden bought with gold coins laid on the ground. One of the most extravagant acts of generosity in this whole long story. But that is the next step. For now, sit for a moment with what this chapter has given you. A verse, 4 lines, spoken on a road by a monk who said himself that he was new to the path and could only tell a little. And from those 4 lines, on 2 of the greatest practitioners this tradition has ever produced, found their direction, kept their promise, ran toward each other and then ran toward the teacher, and spent the rest of their lives, long, devoted, extraordinary lives, giving away what they had received on a dusty road one ordinary morning outside the city of Ragaha. Think of the teachers in your own life who taught you the most. Were they always the ones who intended to teach you? Were they always in a formal setting, in front of a room with a title and a curriculum? Or were some of them simply walking, simply being what they were, with enough clarity that something in their way of moving through the world spoke to something in you that needed to hear it? The beautiful friend, the one whose presence is itself a teaching. You have had them. You may be one for someone else without knowing it. The walk you are on right now, the quality of attention you bring to your own life, the way you move through your own mornings, these things radiate. They are received. They teach whether you intend them to or not. The road is not only the road you walk on, the road is also the road you are. Rest now. Let the morning outside Rajagaha settle around you. The dust and the heat and the sound of the city, and the particular quality of a man running toward his best friend with the best news he has ever had. Let that be the last image before you sleep. Two friends, a promise kept. No, a road that turned out to lead exactly where they needed to go. Chapter 8. The King and the Merchant, Rajagaha and Savatthi. The Sangha is growing. The Buddha does not seek power, but power keeps coming to find him. This is one of the quiet paradoxes of this story. The teaching is not about kingdoms or wealth or social standing. It is about the mind, the nature of the mind, the suffering the mind creates for itself, the path out of that suffering. It has nothing to say at its core about who rules which territory or who owns which garden or whose family line goes back the furthest, and yet kings come, merchants come, and the people with the most to lose from a teaching about non-attachment are among the first to attach themselves to the teacher. Why? Because power does not protect you from dukkha. This is the thing the palace could not hide forever, the thing Siddhartha understood at 7 years old under the rose apple tree. Wealth and influence and the careful arrangement of circumstances can delay the encounter with suffering, can paper over the cracks, can keep the questions quiet for a surprisingly long time, but they cannot answer the questions. And the people who have tried longest and hardest to make wealth and power answer the questions are often the ones who feel most clearly, in the quiet hours, that it is not working. The king of Magadha felt this. His name is Bimbisara, and he is not a simple man. He is shrewd and capable and genuinely concerned with the welfare of his kingdom in the way that the best rulers of any era are concerned, not merely with the stability of their own position, but with the actual condition of the people who live under their governance. He has built roads and hospitals and rest houses along the trade routes. He has governed with more fairness than most of his contemporaries thought necessary, and he has been waiting. Something is shifting beneath the surface. He met Siddhartha once before, years ago, before the forest, before the awakening, when the young prince from Kapilavastu had just arrived in Rajagaha and was making his alms round through the city streets with the unhurried gravity of someone who has made a decision and is living inside it completely. Bimbisara had seen him from a window, or from a road, accounts differ, and had been struck by something in the quality of the figure below. He sent men to follow him, to find out who he was and where he was going. The report came back. A prince from the Shakya clan to the north, renounced everything, living as a wanderer, heading into the forest. Bimbisara went himself to find him. They spoke. The king, being a king, made a practical offer. If you want a kingdom, I will share mine. Half of Magadha, resources, people, land, whatever you need. The young man declined. Gently but completely, he said, I am looking for something that half a kingdom cannot provide, but when I find it, I will return. Bimbisara had believed him. This itself is remarkable. Kings are not generally accustomed to believing wanderers who decline their offers, but something in the way the young man spoke made the offer feel, in retrospect, a little small. Now the wanderer has returned, and he has found what he was looking for. Here is what the history books leave out. When Bimbisara comes to the bamboo grove to hear the teaching, he does not come as a king performing a royal duty or a patron making a political calculation. He comes the way a person comes to something they have been waiting for without quite knowing what they were waiting for, with a mixture of hope and uncertainty and the particular vulnerability of someone who has been genuinely, privately disappointed by most of what the world told them would be satisfying. He listens. The teaching lands on him the way rain lands on dry earth, absorbed immediately, completely, without resistance, because the ground has been waiting for exactly this. By the end of the discourse, Bimbisara has entered the stream. Another Sotapanna, another face with that particular settling on it, that quieting of something that has been bracing for a long time. He offers the bamboo grove, not as a transaction, not as a patron buying influence, as a gesture of the kind of gratitude that has no adequate expression except the giving of the best thing you have. The garden, Veluvana, the bamboo grove, not fragrant and green and close enough to the city that people can walk to teachings without difficulty, becomes the first formal residence of the Sangha, a place to return to, a vihara, a dwelling place, a refuge. And the word will eventually come to mean monastery, but in its original sense it is simply this: somewhere the practitioners can rest and practice and be together, out of the rain, with enough to eat, close enough to the ordinary world to be of use to it. This is dana, generosity, not the generosity of giving what you can easily spare, the generosity of giving what matters most to you, because something you have received is worth more than anything you could keep. The road does not explain itself. It only continues. Now walk northwest. Follow the trade road out of Rajagaha, through the low hills and the river crossings and the long flat stretches of the Gangetic plain, where the sky is enormous and the horizon is so far away, it seems more like a suggestion than a boundary. Walk for several days, through the dust and the heat and the particular rhythm of long road travel, which empties the mind in a useful way and makes everything that is not essential fall away. You arrive in Savatthi, capital of Kosala, a great city larger than Rajagaha in some accounts, certainly noisier, certainly fuller of the competing energies of a place that sits at the intersection of several major trade routes, and has been doing so for long enough that it takes a certain pride in its own complexity. And in this city lives a man named Anathapindika. Pay attention to this. His given name is Sudatta. The name Anathapindika, feeder of the helpless, giver to the destitute, is a title given to him by the people around him. The way titles sometimes emerge organically when a person's character is so consistently expressed in their actions that everyone simply starts calling them by it. He feeds the poor. This is not a program or a policy, it is a habit, not a daily practice, something he does the way he drinks water. Because it is necessary, because it is obvious, because the alternative does not occur to him as a genuine option. He is visiting Rajagaha on business. He is a merchant of considerable success, the kind of person who moves comfortably between the world of commerce and the world of ideas. And he hears about the teacher at the bamboo grove. He goes, he listens, he enters the stream, and then he goes home to Savatthi and he thinks the teacher should come here. This city needs this teaching, and the teacher needs a place to stay in this city. And he looks for a suitable piece of land. He finds it a park owned by a prince named Jita, just outside the city walls. Beautiful, wooded, well-watered, large enough for a substantial community. He approaches Prince Jita and asks to buy it. Prince Jita, who does not particularly want to sell his favorite park, names what he thinks is an impossible price. He says, "You can have it if you can cover the entire ground with gold coins." He means this as a refusal, as a way of saying no. That sounds like it is offering a condition. Anathapindika takes him literally, and the image of what happens next has stayed in this tradition for 25 centuries. And you can feel why, standing here at the edge of the park watching it happen. Carts arrive, carts full of gold coins brought from the merchant's treasury, and men begin laying them on the ground one by one, coin by coin, covering the earth of Jada's park in a slow spreading carpet of gold. Prince Jada watches this for a while. He watches the gold spreading across his garden. He watches a man spending a fortune. Not on himself, not on his family, not on anything that will make him richer or more powerful or more secure. On a piece of ground for monks to live on. And something happens on Prince Jeta's face. Something that is not quite the same as what happened on Kandana's face or Bimbisara's face, but is in the same family of things. A recognition, a reordering of what matters. He stops the counting. He tells Anathapindika, keep your remaining gold. I will contribute the trees. The park will be called Jeta's Grove, Jetavana, and it will be ours together. The Jetavana monastery becomes the place the Buddha returns to most often during the remaining years of his teaching life. He will spend more rains retreats here than anywhere else. So teachings will be delivered here than in any other single location. The Jeta Grove will become, in the geography of this tradition, something like a heartbeat, the place the story keeps returning to, a place that holds more of the teaching than anywhere else. And it was bought with gold coins laid on the ground one by one by a merchant who heard 4 hours of teaching and decided the most useful thing he could do with his wealth was build a home for the Dhamma. This is where the teaching begins, not ends. Now there is a woman on a road. She has been walking for several days. Her feet are bare. She started with sandals, and somewhere along the road she lost them or discarded them. The accounts are not clear, but she has been walking without them for long enough that the soles of her feet are hardened and dusty, and she moves with the particular focused economy of someone who has decided that the discomfort of the road is not a reason to stop. Her name is Mahapajapati Gautami. She is the Buddha's aunt. His mother Maya died 7 days after his birth, as the tradition records, with a grief it does not try to explain away. And Mahapajapati raised him. She fed him. She held him when he cried. She taught him the small, essential things that a mother teaches before a child has words for what it is learning. She loved him with the specific, not complicated love of a woman who is raising a child that is not quite hers and is also entirely hers, and who knows, somewhere underneath the daily work of mothering, that this child is going somewhere she will not be able to follow. She has followed anyway, as far as the road will take her. She has walked to find him because she wants to ask something, not a small thing. The most significant thing she has ever asked of anyone. She wants to be ordained. She wants to join the Sangha, not as a lay supporter, not as a follower who hears the teaching occasionally and goes home to her household. She wants to practice fully. She wants the robe and the bowl and the complete commitment of the monastic life. She has already asked once, at Kapilavastu, through Ananda. The answer was no. Or rather, the answer was silence, which in this context meant no. She has come back barefoot to ask again. Notice what you feel right now. The exchange that follows is one of the most carefully studied and most debated in this entire tradition. Ananda, the Buddha's devoted attendant, man of genuine compassion and genuine courage, takes her case to the teacher. He asks, is a woman capable of attaining the fruits of the path, of entering the stream of full awakening? The answer is yes, without qualification, without hesitation. Yes. Then Ananda says, let Mahapajapati be ordained. What follows is a long pause in the text, a pause that has been interpreted in every possible direction across 25 centuries of reading and rereading. And the Buddha sets conditions, a set of rules governing the relationship between the community of monks and the community of nuns, rules that by the standards of the 5th century before the Common Era represent a radical inclusion, and by the standards of later centuries have been read as a restriction. The debate about what these rules mean and how they should be understood is alive today in monasteries and universities and practice communities around the world, and it is not a debate with a simple resolution. What is not debated is this: Mahapajapati Gautami is ordained. She becomes the first bhikkhuni, the first fully ordained Buddhist nun. She goes on to become a teacher of real significance. A woman whose attainment the tradition records with the same respect it records the attainment of the great monks. She is named in the Anguttara Nikaya as foremost among the bhikkhunis in seniority and experience, the depth of her understanding. She walked barefoot to ask, and the door opened. Something deeper is moving underneath this. Because what Mahapajapati did, walking back barefoot after a refusing to accept that the path was not for her, insisting with the particular, quiet, unmovable insistence of someone who knows what they know. This is not a small thing. This is the thing that makes the tradition large enough to hold everyone who genuinely needs it. The door that opens for her opens for every woman who has ever looked at a spiritual path and been told, this is not for you. None. Your gender, your body, your history, your circumstances. These are disqualifications. She walked barefoot and the door opened. 3 jewels, then, have taken shape in this part of the road. The Buddha, the awakening itself, the possibility, the Dhamma, the teaching, the path, the way of seeing that leads toward the end of unnecessary suffering. And the Sangha, not a uniform community, not a community without difficulty or debate, but a community genuinely large enough to include a king who shared his garden, and a merchant who laid his gold on the ground, and a woman who walked without sandals to ask a second time for what she already deserved. And if something in this walk has stayed with you, if a character on this road has looked up at you from across the centuries and you have recognized something in their face, stay with us. We are more than halfway through this walk, and the road ahead has some of its most extraordinary miles still to come. A mother who will carry a dead child through a village looking for mustard seeds. A killer wearing a necklace of finger bones standing in a forest, watching a monk walk toward him. A courtesan of Vaishali who will give away her mango grove and write a poem about growing old that will still be read 2,500 years from now. The road continues, and so do you. Rest now if you need to. The next mile will be here when you wake. Chapter 9. Women of sorrow, women of light. Not every person who came to him came asking for philosophy. Some came carrying something unbearable. This is the chapter the road has been building toward without announcing itself. Not the awakening under the tree that was luminous and extraordinary, and belongs to one person in one moment on one particular riverbank. And this chapter belongs to everyone, to every person who has ever stood in the middle of an ordinary life and been struck by a loss so complete, so sudden, so total, that the ordinary categories of meaning simply stopped functioning. The frameworks collapsed, the explanations ran out, and what was left was just a person standing in the ruins of what they thought the world was, holding something they could not put down and could not carry. These are the stories the tradition kept, not because they are the most dramatic, because they are the most true. There is a woman in the next town carrying something no medicine can cure. Her name is Siddhartha Gautama. Kisa means thin. She is slight, fine-boned, the kind of person who looks as though the wind might move her, though in fact the wind will not move her, not today, not for any reason, because today she is carrying her child and she is not stopping until someone tells her what she needs to hear. The child is dead. He died this morning, a small child, still young enough that his death has no cause that anyone could name with certainty. Just the terrible arbitrariness that infant death always carries, a reminder that the world does not arrange itself according to what people deserve. He was alive yesterday, he is not alive today, and Siddhartha Gautama, who loved him with the specific ferocity of a mother who has very little else in the world to love, has not accepted this. She is walking through the village with the child in her arms, knocking on doors, asking for medicine. None. She has been doing this for hours. The villagers know what they are looking at. They try to tell her gently, and then less gently, and with the helpless pity of people who cannot fix the unfixable and cannot bear to keep watching someone try. Some of them close their doors, not from cruelty, from the particular anguish of witnessing grief that you cannot reach. Someone sends her to the teacher, not because they think he can cure the child, because they do not know what else to say. She walks to where the Buddha is staying. She pushes through the crowd of people who have come to hear the teaching, and she stands in front of him and she holds out her child and she asks for medicine. The air changes here. He looks at her, not past her, not through her, not with the careful managed compassion of someone who has a system for handling difficult situations. He looks at her the way you look at someone when you are actually present to what they are carrying, when you have not flinched from it or categorized it or decided in advance what it means. He says, I can help you. But first I need something from you. Go into the city and bring me a mustard seed from a household that has not known death. Mustard seeds are everywhere. Every kitchen in the city has them. This should take 10 minutes, she goes. And she knocks on the first door. Has death visited this house? Yes, a grandfather 2 years ago. She moves on. The next house. Yes, a child last winter. The next. Yes, a husband many years past. But the grief is still fresh in the way grief is. The next. Yes. She goes through the whole city. There is no house without its death. There is no household that has been spared. The suffering she is carrying, the specific, howling, unique suffering of this mother with this child on this morning, is also, it turns out, the universal condition. Not the same loss, the same lostness, the same fact of things that end, people who go, loves that cannot hold their object against the current of time. Something deeper is moving underneath this. She comes back to the teacher without the mustard seed. She is not carrying the child anymore. She has found a way, somewhere in the hours of walking and knocking and being answered, to lay the child down. To begin very slowly the process of understanding what has happened. She sits. He does not say, I told you so. He does not offer a philosophical framework for the acceptance of loss. He simply teaches. The same teaching, dukkha, its cause, its end, its path, but received now by a mind that has just been emptied of everything that was not essential. A mind that has been broken open in the most painful way, and is therefore paradoxically the most ready to receive. None. Kisa Gautami becomes a nun. She practices with the kind of commitment that only comes from someone who has lost everything that distraction was hiding behind. She attains full awakening, and her verses appear in the Therigatha, the verses of the elder nuns, one of the oldest collections of women's voices in any religious tradition in the world. And in those verses she speaks about the mustard seed, about the child, about the city, about what she found on the other side of the finding. She found that the suffering was real, and that it was workable, and that the workability did not make it less real, but made it bearable in a way it had not been before. Hold this image gently, because there is another woman, and her story is harder. Her name is Patakara, and if Kisa Gautami lost one unbearable thing, Patakara lost everything. And in a single day, or close to it, in the compressed, pitiless timing of catastrophe, she lost her husband, her 2 children, her parents, and her brother. Not metaphorically, actually. In the accounts, each loss follows the previous one with the relentless logic of a nightmare from which there is no waking. The snake in the path, the river in flood, the storm, the fire, another, one after another, until there is nothing left to lose because everything has already been taken. She arrived at the place where the Buddha was teaching in a state that the texts describe carefully and without sensationalism. She was not wearing clothes. She had been walking, it appears, for long enough and through enough that the ordinary social markers, the robe, the presentation, the self that is performed for the world had simply fallen away. She was just a person, stripped of everything, including the self-consciousness that usually holds a person together in public. The crowd tried to turn her away. A woman in this state, coming toward a gathering of monks. This was not how things were done, the Buddha said. Let her come. Pay attention to this. He spoke to her. Quietly, directly, without pity and without distance. He spoke to her the way you speak to someone who has been through something so extreme that ordinary gentleness would feel like an insult. He spoke to her as someone who took her seriously, and as someone who believed she was capable of understanding what had happened to her and moving through it and coming out somewhere on the other side. She heard him. She came back to herself, slowly. The way a person comes back after something enormous has moved through them, the way the landscape comes back into focus after a storm. She was given a robe. She sat down. She listened. Pattakara became one of the most revered teachers in the early Sangha, not despite what she had been through, because of the quality of understanding that what she had been through made possible. She had lost everything. She knew, therefore, in her body and not just in her mind, what impermanence actually means. When she taught about anicca, about the impermanence of all conditioned things, she was not speaking from a philosophical position. No, she was speaking from the ground of her own life, burned clear. Students came to her later, who were carrying their own losses. She met them exactly where they were. She did not offer comfort that bypassed the grief. She went into the grief with them and helped them find what she had found. That on the other side of the full experience of loss, not the avoidance of it, not the management of it, but the full honest experience of it, something remains, something that the loss cannot touch, something that was there before the loss and is still there after. The teaching calls it the deathless, the unconditioned, the thing in you that does not arise from causes and therefore does not cease when causes change. You have been here before in some way. Not Pattakara's specific catastrophe, none, but the specific quality of a moment when the ordinary structures of meaning gave way, and you found yourself standing in something raw and without framework and had to discover from the ground up what you were actually made of, not what you found in that moment. That is the same territory Pattakara was mapping. That is the same ground the teaching is pointing toward, not the grief itself. What is on the other side of the grief when you do not run from it? A road opens. Now there is a question on this road that has been waiting for several miles to be asked properly. Not a question about suffering, a question about the self, about what exactly it is that suffers, that loses, that grieves. For this question, the road takes us forward in time. Several centuries forward to a meeting that becomes one of the most famous philosophical dialogues in the Buddhist tradition. A king and a monk, sitting across from each other in a hall somewhere in the northwest of the subcontinent. The king sharp and skeptical and genuinely curious, the monk patient and precise and carrying a particular gift for making the abstract suddenly visible. The king's name is Milinda. The monk's name is Nagasena. And here is the question underneath the question. And King Milinda is not a foolish man. He is Greek by background, a descendant probably of the soldiers who came east with Alexander of Macedon 2 centuries before. And he has absorbed both the Greek philosophical tradition and the intellectual culture of the subcontinent where he rules, and the combination has made him formidably well-equipped for an argument. He has been defeating Buddhist monks in debate for some time, not from malice, from genuine curiosity. He wants to know if the teaching holds up. He asks Nagasena, "Who are you?" Nagasena says, "I am called Nagasena, but that name is just a designation. There is no permanent self to be found." The king is skeptical. If there is no self, he says, then who practices the precepts? No. Who is it that attains nibbana? Who is it that I am talking to right now? Nagasena asks, "How did you get here today?" "By chariot," the king says. Nagasena asks, "Is the chariot the wheels?" "No." "Is it the axle?" "No." "The frame? The harness?" "No." "The pole?" "No, no, no." "Is it the combination of all these parts?" "No." A combination is not a thing in itself. It is just a description of an arrangement. Then Nagasena says, "Is the chariot something apart from all these parts?" "No." "Then where is the chariot?" There is a pause. "There is no chariot," Nagasena says, "in the way you are looking for it. No single, essential, unchanging thing called chariot that exists independently of its parts. There is an arrangement of parts that functions in a certain way, and to which we give the name chariot for convenience. The name is real. The function is real. The permanent, essential, unchanging self that the name seems to point to. That is the part that is not there. This is what you are," Nagasena says. An arrangement, a process, a flowing series of causes and conditions giving rise to experiences and responses and memories and intentions, all of it moving, all of it changing, none of it requiring a fixed central self to be real. The King Milinda is silent for a moment. Then he says, "Well answered. Let that settle. Because what Nagasena has just described is not nihilism. This is the thing people most often misunderstand. The teaching is not saying you do not exist. The teaching is saying you exist in a different way than you think, not as a fixed noun, as a living verb, not as a thing that has experiences, as the experiencing itself moment to moment, real and present and fully here, without needing a permanent unchanging owner behind it to make it valid. The grief of Kisa Gautami was real. The loss of Patakara was real. The love that made both of those griefs possible was real. None of this requires a permanent self to be real. It requires only what is actually there. The experiencing, the loving, the losing, the finding, present and true and sufficient. This is karuna, compassion, not the compassion that stays at a safe distance from suffering and sends it good wishes. The compassion that walks into the room where the suffering is and sits down. The compassion that says, I see what you are carrying and I am not afraid of it and I am not going anywhere. The Buddha did not offer Kisa Gautami a philosophy. He offered her a walk through a city. He did not offer Patakara an explanation. He offered her his attention. The crowd parted in space to return to herself. And the teaching moved through both of those encounters, not as doctrine but as presence, as the quality of someone who has seen through the suffering clearly enough to not be frightened by it, who can therefore be genuinely near it. None, something ancient is speaking. There is one more thing. The Therigatha, the verses of the elder nuns, is one of the oldest surviving collections of women's poetry in the world. It was composed and preserved in a tradition that, for all its complications around gender, kept these voices. Kept Kisa Gautami's voice and Patakara's and dozens of others, women who had been courtesans and queens and slaves and mothers and scholars, who came to the practice by 100 different roads and found what they found and wrote it down in verse. The verse is not decorative, it is evidence. Evidence that the path was walked, that the finding was real, that the thing on the other side of the grief and the loss and the full honest experience of impermanence is not nothing. It is something. The tradition kept these voices because the tradition knew. These are the proof, not the philosophical arguments, not the elaborate cosmologies. These women, writing from the ground of their actual experience, with nothing to prove and nothing to hide, these are the proof. You have been walking this road with them for some time now, with Kandana's face and Anathapindika's gold coins and Mahapajapati's bare feet, not with the 5 men in the deer park and the 2 friends running toward each other on a dusty road, and now with Kisa Gautami, who put down what she could not carry and found she could stand, and Patakara, who lost everything and became a teacher of what remains. This is the road, not always beautiful, not always easy, but honest, always honest about what human life actually contains and what it is possible to find in it, even in the worst of it, especially in the worst of it. Rest here for a moment. Let the voices of these women settle around you like the evening settling, slowly, without rush, in the particular quiet of a day that has given you more than you expected and asked you to carry it honestly. The road ahead has a forest in it, and in the forest, a figure that will require the most unusual kind of courage this walk has yet asked of anyone. Not yet, but soon. Sleep if you need to. The forest will be there in the morning. Chapter 10. The killer on the road, Kosala. The road does not always lead to the gentle. Sometimes it leads directly toward the thing most people would run from. This is one of those times. And the forest outside the city of Savatthi has a reputation, not the reputation of a place that is merely dangerous in the ordinary ways that forests can be dangerous. Wild animals, difficult terrain, the disorientation that comes from losing the path in dense undergrowth. This forest has a specific reputation. A specific reason why the roads through it have gone quiet, known why the merchants who used to travel this way have started taking longer routes, why the villages at the forest's edge have pulled their doors shut earlier in the evening and kept their children closer than usual. There is a man in this forest. His name before the forest was Ahimsaka. The name means harmless. and it was given to him at birth by parents who loved him and could not have known what the years between the giving of the name and this moment would do to the person they gave it to. He was intelligent, exceptionally intelligent, the kind of student that teachers remember, the kind of mind that moves through material so quickly that it laps the curriculum and starts asking questions the curriculum was not designed to answer. And he went to study with a teacher in Taxila in the Northwest. He was the best student in the school, and this, his excellence, his visible superiority, made the other students afraid of him, and afraid people sometimes do the thing that fear makes people do. They went to the teacher and they lied. They said Ahimsaka was plotting against him, that the student meant to surpass the teacher not just in learning but in reputation, to take what the teacher had built and claim it as his own. The teacher believed them, or chose to believe them, or found the lie convenient for reasons of his own. He gave Ahimsaka a final assignment, a graduation task, he called it. Bring me 1,000 human fingers, one from each of 1,000 people. There is a detail here worth sitting with. What does a person do when the authority they have trusted most gives them an instruction that is clearly, obviously, catastrophically wrong? Not when the framework they have been living inside, the teacher, the school, a system of meaning that has organized their days and their effort and their sense of what they are becoming, turns out to contain something monstrous at its center. Some people leave, some people argue, some people, in the particular combination of youth and devotion and the desperate need to believe that the framework is sound, comply. Ahimsaka complied. He went into the forest, he began, made himself a necklace of the fingers he collected. Not from pride, not from cruelty in any simple sense, not from the same compulsive record-keeping that sometimes overtakes people who are trying to finish something they have started and cannot find a way to stop. The necklace gave him his name, Angulimala, finger garland, 999. He needs one more. The road through the forest is empty. It has been empty for months. No merchant, no pilgrim, no traveler of any kind is willing to take it anymore. And even soldiers have started going around. The king of Kosala, Pasenadi, King Bimbisara's counterpart in the northwest, has assembled an army to deal with what is in this forest, and the army is preparing to move on. On the morning the army is preparing, a monk walks into the forest alone, not out of ignorance. The accounts are clear that people tried to warn him. Villagers called out. A woman, in some accounts, his own mother, ran toward the road and begged him not to go. The forest is dangerous. There is a killer in there. No one who goes in comes out. He thanked them for their concern and walked in. Now watch what happens next. Angulimala sees him from a distance. A single monk walking through his forest, unhurried, carrying nothing, moving with that quality of ease that keeps appearing in this story and keeps meaning the same thing. A person who has put down something heavy and found the world lighter than expected. He starts toward him. He is not slow. None. He covers ground quickly. He has been in this forest for a long time, and he knows it the way a person knows a place where they have lived long enough for the geography to become part of their body. He moves fast through the undergrowth, through the gaps between the trees, gaining ground. The monk does not run, does not change pace, keeps walking. Angulimala moves faster. The monk keeps walking. Angulimala, none who can outrun horses. The accounts say this, and it is not hard to believe, given what his life in this forest has required of him physically. Angulimala runs and cannot close the distance. This is not physically possible. Knows this. He is faster than this man on any ordinary measure of faster. And yet the distance between them will not shrink. It is as if the space between them is made of something other than space, as if the closing of it requires something that speed alone cannot provide. He stops, he calls out, "Stop, monk," and the monk stops, turns, looks at him across the distance between them and says, in a voice that carries in the forest, quiet with the ease of a voice that is not afraid of what it is saying, "I have stopped, Angulimala. Have you?" And the silence that follows this sentence is one of the most important silences in this entire story. because the sentence is impossible in two directions at once. Physically, the monk was walking, not stopped, so the claim is literally untrue, and Angulimala knows it, and the monk knows that Angulimala knows it not. But at another level, the level the sentence is actually operating at, the monk has stopped something that Angulimala has not stopped. The monk has stopped the adding to the chain of causes that create suffering. The monk has stopped the motion of craving and aversion that drives ordinary existence the way a wheel is driven by its axle. The monk has stopped in a way that has nothing to do with the speed of feet on a forest path. None. And Angulimala, 999 fingers alone in a forest, in the service of an instruction he received from a man who lied to him about why he was giving it. Angulimala understands what is being said to him. Not. Pay attention to this, not because understanding makes it simple. Understanding here is the beginning of the hardest thing a person can do, which is not to add more violence to the chain, but to stop the chain. See clearly what the chain is made of and what it has made of you, and to choose in full awareness of what you have already done and cannot undo, to stop adding to it. He throws down his sword. He sits down in the forest. 9. Right there, in the undergrowth, in the particular silence of a forest when something enormous has just happened, and the birds have not yet decided it is safe to resume their noise. He asks to be ordained. The accounts in the Majjhima Nikaya tell what follows with a matter-of-factness that is itself a kind of teaching. Angulimala is ordained. He practices. He goes into the city of Savatthi for his alms round, and the city, which knows who he is not immediately welcoming. People throw things. Stones, sticks, whatever is at hand. He returns to the teacher with his head bleeding and his bowl broken. The Buddha looks at him and says, "Endure it. You are experiencing now in this life the consequences of what you have done. What might have played out across many lifetimes is resolving itself here in this body, on this road. Endure it." He endures it. He practices. And he attains full awakening. His verses are in the Theragatha, the verses of the elder monks. He writes about the forest, about the sword, about what it means to have done what cannot be undone, and to have found, on the other side of the full honest reckoning with it, that the path is still there, that the path does not require you to have been clean before you stepped onto it. This is ahimsa, non-harm, understood not as a rule but as a direction, not a standard you must have met before you begin, but a direction you can turn toward from wherever you are standing, regardless of where you have been. Not something ancient is speaking, and this is sila, ethical conduct, not as a fence that keeps the bad out, but as a foundation that makes genuine practice possible. Not because ethics is required as payment for the teaching, because the mind that is actively harming cannot see clearly. The mud stirred by violence cannot settle into clarity. The moment Angulimala threw down the sword was the moment his mind became available to what it had not been available to before, not because he was forgiven by some external authority, but because the action that was preventing the seeing had stopped. The sword in the dirt, the forest going quiet, the birds beginning very slowly to resume. Now the road takes us out of the forest and back toward the city. There is a king here worth pausing with, not Bimbisara of Magadha, whom we have already met, but Pasenadi of Kosala, the king of this territory, in whose forest Angulimala lived and under whose authority the army was preparing to march. Pasenadi comes to the teacher. He comes often. He is one of those people for whom the encounter with genuine teaching becomes a habit, a regular return, the way some people return to a river, because standing beside moving water is one of the few things that reliably helps them think clearly. He has been aging visibly. He says this himself, directly and without self-pity, to the Buddha on one of these visits. He has gotten fat. He tires easily. The things that were effortless at 30 are laborious at 50, and he has no illusions about what 60 will bring. None. He is a king who has won battles and lost battles and made good decisions and made terrible ones, and watched his kingdom change around him and watched himself change with it, not always in the directions he would have chosen. There is where the road bends. The Buddha does not tell him to feel better about aging. does not offer a philosophical reframe designed to make the reality of the body's decline more palatable. And he says something more practical and more honest. Pay attention to what you eat. Walk more. The body is a condition that can be worked with skillfully or unskillfully, and working with it skillfully does not require pretending it is other than it is. Pasanati, in the accounts, takes this seriously. He works with it. He continues to age. Of course he does. Because the teaching is not a reversal of physics, but he does so with more clarity and less resistance, and the clarity itself is a form of ease that the resistance was preventing. This is the teaching at its most practical and most domestic, not mysticism, not cosmic drama. A king and a teacher talking about food and walking and the honest acknowledgement of a body that is doing what bodies do. The teaching applies here too, especially here. This is where the teaching begins, not ends. There is one more thing that the road through Kosala holds, and it is not a person. It is a question. The road from Savatthi to the east passes through towns and forests and river crossings, and occasional stretches of very flat, very empty plain where the sky is so large and so present that it is impossible not to feel, walking under it, that the ordinary scale of things has been temporarily suspended. In these stretches, and you have walked through them, you know the quality of them. In these stretches, the question that has been accompanying you since the beginning of this walk tends to become audible again. What does this mean for me? Not for a prince or a merchant or a king or a woman walking barefoot to ask for ordination. For me here, in the life I am actually living, on the road I am actually on, the answer the road gives is not a formula. It is not a set of instructions that apply uniformly regardless of condition, and it is something more like a direction, the direction of ahimsa, of non-harm, of the consistent, daily, undramatic choice to stop adding to the chain of causes that create suffering in yourself, in the people near you, the circles of your influence, however large or small those circles are. Angulimala threw down his sword in a forest outside Savatthi, and the forest went quiet and the birds came back. You do not have a sword in the same sense, but there is something, there is always something that could be put down. Some habit of mind, some practiced unkindness toward yourself or toward others, some chain of cause and response that you have been a link in for long enough that you have stopped noticing you are a link. What would happen if you stopped? What would the forest sound like? Rest here for a while, and let the road through Kosala settle around you, the dust and the flat sky and the particular quality of late afternoon light in a place where the horizon goes all the way to the edge of the world. The army that was preparing to march into the forest stood down. Angulimala was already a monk by the time they arrived at the forest's edge. The commander sent word back to the king. The forest is clear. The king came to the teacher and said, "What I could not do with an army, you did with a walk." And the teacher said nothing, because some things are not improved by words. Let the silence hold that for a moment. We are walking north now, toward a city beside a river where a woman named Ambapali will give away her mango grove and write the most honest poem about aging you have ever heard, where Ananda will weep beside a road, where the Buddha will say goodbye to the most beautiful city on the Gangetic plain 3 times before the 3rd time breaks through. Vaishali is waiting. Stay with us a little longer. The road ahead is quieter than this one, and quieter on this walk does not mean less. It means deeper, the kind of depth that asks you to slow down and feel rather than follow and understand. The mango grove is in bloom. You will smell it before you see it. Chapter 11. The Mango Grove, Vaishali. There are places on this road that ask you to slow down. Vaishali is one of them. You know this before you arrive. And something in the quality of the light changes as you approach. Not dramatically, not in any way that would show up in a painting or a description, but perceptibly, the way the air changes near a large body of water even before you can see the water. Vaishali sits in the northern reaches of the Gangetic plain, a land that is flat and well-watered and old in the way that only places continuously inhabited for a very long time become old. a depth to the ordinariness of things, a sense that the ground beneath your feet has been walked by so many generations that it has absorbed something of all of them. The city itself is remarkable, and it is one of the earliest republics in recorded history, governed not by a single king but by a council of elected representatives from the Likavi clan, men who debate and vote and argue in an assembly hall, and have been doing so for longer than most of the kingdoms around them have existed. The streets are wide and the market is loud, and the river that runs near the city carries trade in both directions, and the whole place has the particular energy of somewhere that takes itself seriously without taking itself too seriously. And at the edge of the city to the north there is a mango grove. Stay with this for a moment. The grove belongs to a woman named Ambapali. She is one of the most famous women in Vaishali, famous in a way that is complicated, a way fame always is when it belongs to a woman in an ancient world that has decided which kinds of fame are appropriate. She is a Ganaka, a courtesan of the highest class, a woman of education and skill and genuine cultural authority, whose house is a place where the city's most powerful men come to hear music and debate philosophy and be in the presence of someone whose intelligence is sharp enough to be genuinely interesting to people who are used to being the most interesting person in the room. She has wealth, she has influence, she has, by the standards of her world, everything a person in her position could have accumulated, and she has a mango grove outside the city, green and fragrant and shaded, and with the particular quality of a place that has been tended with real care. The care of someone who understands that a garden is not merely a collection of trees, but a relationship between a person and a piece of living ground that unfolds over years and requires patience and attention, and the willingness to show up every day regardless of whether you feel like it. And the Buddha is traveling through the North Country with a large company of monks, and word reaches Vaishali that he is nearby. The Likshavi nobles, the powerful men of the council, the ones accustomed to getting the first and best of everything that comes through their city, send a delegation immediately. Come to Vaishali, stay with us, we will host you. But Ambapali has already sent her own messenger, and the Buddha has already said yes to her. The Likshavi nobles arrive on their magnificent chariots, dressed in their finest, prepared to make an offer that no reasonable person would decline. They meet Ambapali's messenger on the road outside the city, going in the other direction, and they understand immediately what has happened. The teacher has accepted the courtesan's invitation before the councils. They are not pleased. They offer Ambapali a fortune for the invitation, 100,000 gold pieces in some accounts. Please transfer the engagement. Let us host the teacher instead. She declines, simply, without drama, without any particular satisfaction in the declining. She has given her word. She will not take it back for any price. The Likshavi nobles arrive at the grove to discover the teacher and his monks already settled among the mango trees, and they sit and listen to the teaching. And the teaching is the teaching. It does not adjust itself for the status of its audience. And the same words that went to Kundana in the deer park, and to Bimbisara in the bamboo grove, and to Angulimala in the forest go to the Likshavi nobles in the mango grove, and to Ambapali, who sits and listens with the quality of attention that only comes from a mind that has been genuinely prepared by a life seriously lived. At the end of the teaching, she does something that is remembered as one of the great acts of generosity in this tradition. She gives the grove away. Not for the duration of the rain's retreat, not as a loan. She gives the mango grove of Ambapali to the Sangha permanently. The trees, the land, the water rights, all of it. The thing she has tended most carefully, the place that is most hers. She gives it without the hesitation that usually accompanies giving away what you love most. The Likavi nobles, who had offered her a fortune for a dinner invitation, now watch her give away a fortune for nothing at all. They do not understand, and their not understanding is itself a teaching, though they are not quite ready to receive it. There is something quiet happening here, because what Ambapali is doing is not renunciation in the sense of turning away from the world in disgust, and it is not the action of a person who has decided that beauty and pleasure and the cultivation of excellence are errors to be corrected. She is not ashamed of her life. She will write about her life. In the Therigatha, her verses will describe her body with a frankness and a precision that is breathtaking even now. Reading it across 25 centuries, she will write about her hair in her youth, black and fragrant and thick, the hair of a woman in full bloom. She will write about what the years have made of it, sparse and white, like the strips of bark peeled from a hemp plant. She will write about her eyes, her teeth, her skin, her gait, the body of a young woman and then the body of an old woman, described side by side with the equanimity of someone who is not trying to choose between them, but simply seeing both clearly. The poem is called A Teaching on Impermanence. It is also a love poem addressed to the body itself in all its versions, though spoken by someone who has had the courage to actually inhabit the life she was given, rather than spend it wishing for a different one. Such is the body, the house of disease, the frail thing. The true speaker speaks thus. And she became a nun. She practiced. Her verses in the Therigatha are among the most alive things in that collection. The voice of a woman who came to the teaching not from a position of innocence or untouched purity, but from the full, complicated, inhabited reality of an extraordinary life, and found that the teaching was large enough to hold all of it. Hold this image gently. The rain's retreat at Vaishali is the last one. The Buddha is 80 years old. Old in the way that a person who has spent most of their adult life walking becomes old, with the particular wear of a body that has given itself completely to the work it came to do. He is thin. The illness that will eventually end his life has already visited him once during this retreat, severely enough that Ananda, standing outside the room, unable to go in, his hands pressed together, thought the end had come. It did not come. Not yet. The Buddha recovered enough to continue, and he called Ananda to him and said something that Ananda wrote into his memory with the kind of completeness that only comes from knowing that a sentence will matter for the rest of your life. He said, "I am old now, Ananda, 80 years. The body is like an old cart that can only be held together with straps and careful handling. Even so, I continue." He paused, and then he said something more. "You should be your own island, Ananda, your own refuge, not look for an external refuge. The Dhamma is your island. The Dhamma is your refuge. Look nowhere else." Ananda heard this. He tried to hold it. He was not quite ready for what it meant. Something deeper is moving underneath this. Because what the Buddha is saying to Ananda, to this man who has been his shadow for 25 years, who has heard every teaching, who has been present at every significant moment, who loves the teacher with a completeness and a devotion that is one of the most moving things in this whole long story, what he is saying is, do not make me your island. The island has to be inside you. A refuge has to be in the seeing, not in the seer. This is the hardest thing Ananda will ever be asked to understand. He has spent a quarter century making the Buddha his island. The love is real. The devotion is real. And the teaching is asking him to take what the love and devotion have been pointing toward, the Dhamma, the capacity for clear seeing that the teacher embodies, and find it in himself. He is not ready. He will not be ready for some time. He will become ready on the night after the Buddha dies, sitting alone in a room. And something will open in him that all 25 years of proximity to the teacher could not open while the teacher was alive. But that is later. Now the retreat ends. The road north is waiting, and the community gathers what it has and begins to move as it has moved so many times before, quietly, without ceremony. The monks walking in single file on the road at dawn with the dew still on the grass and the light still low and the whole long familiar rhythm of this life beginning again. And the Buddha stops. He turns and looks back at Vaishali. This is where the road bends. The gesture he makes has a name in the tradition. Nagapalokita, the elephant look. The way an elephant turns its whole body to look back at something, not just the head. the entire animal turning to acknowledge what is behind it. He does not just glance over his shoulder, he stops, he turns, and he looks at the city with a quality of attention that people who are standing near him will remember for the rest of their lives and try to describe for the rest of their lives without quite being able to. He says to Ananda, "This is the last time I will see Vaishali." Ananda hears this. He understands the words. He does not yet understand what the words mean. They walk on. At a certain distance down the road, the Buddha stops and turns again. A second look. Vaishali still visible behind them, the city going about its morning, the river catching the light, the mango grove at its edge green and still. He looks, he turns, he walks on, and the third stop, the third turn, the third look back at the city that has held more of his teaching than almost any other place on this long road. The third time Ananda understands. The third time Ananda covers his face, not dramatically, just a hand coming up slowly, covering the mouth and the eyes, the gesture a person makes when they are trying to hold something in that does not want to be held in. He has understood. This is a goodbye. This is the specific quality of a last look from someone who knows it is the last look. The city does not know. The river does not know. The mango grove does not know. Only this small group of people on the road, and one of them is covering his face and the others are looking at the ground, and the teacher has already turned and is walking north. Let that settle on, because this is anicca, impermanence, not as a philosophical concept to be understood from a safe distance, but as a lived reality arriving in real time. Not the impermanence of abstract things, the impermanence of a specific city, a specific grove, a specific morning, a specific set of relationships that have shaped the last 25 years of a life and will not be repeated. And alongside the grief held in the same hand as the grief, way some things can only be held together, is upekkha, equanimity, not the absence of feeling. The presence of a spaciousness large enough to hold the feeling without being destroyed by it. The ability to look back at Vaishali 3 times and mean the looking completely and then turn and keep walking. This is not coldness. This is the most difficult warmth there is. The warmth that does not clutch, that loves without demanding that what it loves remain unchanged, that can say goodbye to a city it loves and then face north and keep moving because the road requires it and the road is trusted. The Buddha walks north. Ananda walks behind him, his hand no longer covering his face, his feet on the road, his whole life in this moment, reduced to the simplicity of one foot and then the other, and following a teacher who is walking towards something that both of them know is coming. There is one more thing. 250 years from now, a king will stand where you are standing now. His name is Ashoka. Ashoka the Great, emperor of the Maurya dynasty, ruler of a territory that stretches from the borders of Persia to the edges of the subcontinent, the largest empire the ancient world of this region will ever see. He did not start this way. No, he started as a prince of considerable ambition and considerable brutality, ambitious enough to kill his own brothers to secure the throne, brutal enough to conduct a war against the kingdom of Kalinga that killed, by his own later accounting, 100,000 people. 100,000 people in a single military campaign and tens of thousands more displaced, and the land scarred in the way that land is scarred by war, which is to say in ways that last much longer than the war itself. He won. He stood on the battlefield at Kalinga and looked at what he had won and felt something break open in his chest that had never broken before. And he walked through the aftermath, the bodies, the burned villages, the people with their losses written on their faces, and he understood, for the first time in his life with his whole body and not just his mind, that this was dukkha, the suffering he had created, the chain of causes he had added to with every decision that led to this field. He became a Buddhist, not in the ceremonial sense of adopting a label, and in the sense of actually changing the organization of his life, the nature of his governance, the direction of his violence. He stopped hunting. He built hospitals for people, and then, in one of the most extraordinary details of the ancient world, for animals as well, He sent his children as missionaries to spread the Dhamma. He carved edicts into stone pillars across his empire, pillars that still stand in museums and fields and roads across South Asia today, still legible, still speaking in the Brahmi script of his time. One of those edicts describes a pilgrimage he made. He came here, to these places, to Lumbini and Bodh Gaya and Sarnath and the sites along this road. He came as a pilgrim, not as a conqueror. He stood at Lumbini and wept and built a pillar. He stood at Bodh Gaya and was moved. He came to the places where the teaching had been spoken and lived and walked, and he felt, standing in them, the quality of what had happened here. He was not trying to preserve a religion. He was trying to understand what had turned a battlefield in Kalinga into the beginning of a different kind of life. The answer, it turned out, was the same thing that turned Angulimala around in a forest, the same thing that brought Siddhartha Gautama back without the mustard seed, the same thing that made Ananda cover his face on a road north of Vaishali. The seeing, the clear, honest, unflinching seeing of what is actually happening. The willingness to look at the battlefield and not look away. The willingness to look at the city you are leaving and not look away. And the willingness to look at the suffering you have caused and the suffering you have received, and to find, on the other side of the looking, not despair but the beginning of a different direction. Ashoka called his different direction Dhamma. He inscribed it on stone because stone lasts. It has lasted. The pillars are still standing. The road continues north. The sal trees at the edge of the world are waiting. No, we are not there yet. The night beneath them is still ahead. The teaching is still moving, carried now not just by the voice of one teacher, but by every person who has heard it and lived it and passed it on. Monk and merchant, king and courtesan, philosopher and mother walking barefoot, a killer in a forest who threw down his sword and sat down and asked to begin. Rest here tonight, in the mango grove, in the evening light, with Ambapali's poem settling around you like leaves falling from a tree in no particular hurry. The body is impermanent. The teaching is not. Sleep now. Tomorrow the road goes north. After 12, the long goodbye, Vaishali to Pava. You have walked with him through forests and cities, through joy and loss. Now the road is changing, not dramatically, not with any announcement. The road north from Vaishali looks like every other road on this walk. The same dust, the same flat sky, the same quality of morning light falling sideways across the fields in long pale bars. The birds are the same birds. And the river crossings are the same river crossings. The monks walking in single file behind the teacher are doing what they have always done. Walking, breathing, present to the road, carrying nothing that is not necessary. But something in the quality of the walking has shifted. You can feel it without being able to name it, the way you can feel a change in the weather before the weather itself arrives. Something in the air, something in the quality of the silences between words, something in the way Ananda walks, slightly closer than usual, as if proximity could prevent what proximity cannot prevent. The road goes north, the company follows, and there is something quiet happening here. The teaching continues even now. The Buddha stops in towns and villages along the way and sits with whoever has come to listen, and the listening is the same quality of listening. It has always been attentive and unhurried, the teacher present to each person who comes as if that person is the only person who has ever sat across from him with a question. The teaching does not diminish. The presence does not diminish. What is diminishing is only the body, and even that diminishing is instructive, is itself a teaching, is the most honest thing the tradition could offer to the people watching it happen. He is showing them what it looks like to age and weaken without resentment, what it looks like to carry a body that is failing while continuing to do what the body came here to do, what it looks like to not waste the time that remains on wishing for more of it. This is not resignation. This is something much harder and much more alive than resignation. Hold this image gently. The company reaches a town called Pava, which sits on the road to Kushinagar, not close enough to the destination that you can feel the approach of it even if you cannot see it yet. Pava is a small town, not a capital, not a famous city, not a place that would appear on most maps of the ancient world. And it is simply a town on a road, the kind of town that exists in most of the world's geography to serve the people moving through it. There is a man here named Kunda. He is a blacksmith, a maker of things, a person whose life is organized around the transformation of raw material into something useful, which is a way of living that tends to produce a particular quality of directness and practicality and a low tolerance for the merely decorative. He has heard about the teacher. He comes to listen. He listens well. Then he invites the company to eat at his house. Pay attention to this. What Kunda serves, and the texts are specific about this in a way that has generated centuries of debate among scholars, physicians, and practitioners. What Kunda serves includes a dish whose Pali name is Sukaramadava. The word could mean soft pork. It could mean a truffle-like mushroom that pigs root for. It could mean something else entirely, in the particular way that old words in dead dietary contexts mean things that resist clean translation. The debate is genuine and unresolved and ultimately may not matter as much as what happens after. The Buddha eats, and the other monks are directed by the Buddha himself not to eat the Sukaramadava, only he takes it, whether this is because he knows what it will do to him, or because some quality of the dish is particularly suited to his condition, or for reasons that the texts do not make fully explicit. He eats it, and the other monks eat what they eat, and the meal is completed with gratitude, and the company prepares to continue north toward Kushinagar. And then he becomes very ill. The illness is severe in the way that the illness of a person who is already weakened by age becomes severe, quickly, without the resilience that a younger body might summon. There is pain. The accounts do not look away from this. The Mahaparinibbana Sutta, which describes these final days with the specificity of a document written by people who were present and understood that every detail mattered, says the pain was sharp and deadly, a kind that would have ended a less disciplined mind. He does not end. He rests, he recovers enough to continue, and before he leaves, he does something that is quietly extraordinary. He tells Ananda, make sure Kunda is not blamed for this. Make sure he understands that this meal is not a fault but a gift. Tell him that of all the meals offered to me in this life, two are of equal and supreme merit. The meal that Sujata offered me at the river before the awakening, and this meal offered by Kunda before the parinibbana. Both are turning points. Both are moments of genuine generosity at the threshold of something immense. He must not carry guilt for what happens next. Something deeper is moving underneath this. And because what the Buddha is doing here, in the middle of acute physical suffering, weakened and in pain on a road far from the places where most of his life was lived, what he is doing is caring for the emotional condition of the man who fed him. He is thinking ahead to Kunda's grief, the story Kunda will tell himself in the months and years after this, to the weight of having been the last person to feed the teacher before the teacher died. He is doing right now what he has done on every road of this walk, meeting each person where they are, attending to what they actually need, finding in the specifics of their situation the most useful thing that can be offered. And the teaching does not stop because the body is in pain. The compassion does not stop because the body is in pain. These are not performances that require a healthy stage. They are conditions of the mind, and the mind, even now, is clear. The road continues north, and here is the part that stays with you. The distance from Pava to Kushinagar is not long. Perhaps 20 kilometers, perhaps a little more. A distance that, under ordinary circumstances, would take a few hours to walk at a comfortable pace. But this is not an ordinary walk. The illness has weakened him severely enough that the walk requires stops, multiple stops. The company pauses at a river so he can drink and rest in the shade. Ananda spreads a robe on the ground. The teacher sits. He asks Ananda to fold the robe into 4 and lay it down so he can rest more comfortably. Ananda does this. Ananda does this with the quality of care that people bring to small acts when they understand. The small acts are what they have left. He folds the robe carefully. He lays it on the ground. He stands nearby, and the teacher rests. There is a Pali word, samadhi, that is usually translated as deep concentration or meditative absorption, the quality of mind that results from sustained, unified practice. But the root of the word is closer to something like to place together, to collect, to gather into one. And watching the teacher rest beside this road, in pain, weakened, still fully present, the eyes that opened on the morning star at Bodhi Gaya, still the same eyes. You understand that samadhi is not only something that happens on a meditation cushion. It is a quality that some people carry into every moment of their lives, including this one. A gatheredness, a collectedness, the opposite of being scattered by circumstances. He has not been scattered by these circumstances. He is more here in this moment than most people are in any moment of their life. They rest, they continue, they rest again. The road in this stretch is lined with trees that are beginning to flower, not the sal trees. Those are at Kushinagar, still ahead. Other trees, ordinary road trees of the kind that grow along paths throughout this part of the world, their roots holding the road's edge against the monsoon rains. Their flowers are small and white, and they fall in the light wind that has come up from the south, drifting slowly across the road, settling in the dust. Ananda walks slightly behind and to the left, a position he has walked in for 25 years. His face is doing the thing it has been doing since Vaishali. Trying to hold in what does not want to be held in, trying to stay present to the road when everything in him wants to stop the road, to find some way of making this walk not go where it is going. He cannot stop it. Nobody can stop it. The road goes where the road goes. And keep this moment close, because this right here, this stretch of road between Pava and Kushinagar, with the flowers falling, and the light moving through the trees and the company walking in the quiet that has settled over them like a garment, this is what the whole walk has been preparing you for. Not the awakening under the Bodhi Tree, though that was the luminous center of everything. Not the first sermon at Deer Park, though that was the moment the teaching entered the world. This, the long walk toward the end. The willingness to keep moving when moving is hard. The willingness to stay present to what is present. This is parinibbana. Not yet, but approaching. The word means the nibbana that is complete, the release that is final, the extinguishing of the last conditions that kept the flame of conditioned existence burning. In the teaching, this is not a tragedy, it is a completion. But completion, even when it is the right word, can still be the hardest word. Nanda knows this. He is walking with it. One foot, then the other. The road does not explain itself. It only continues. There is a detail on this stretch of road that the Mahaparinibbana Sutta preserves with the kind of specificity that suggests it was important to the people who remembered it. At one of the resting stops, a man named Pukusa, a young man of the Mala clan, the people who live in the territory through which the road is passing, encounters the company and sits to listen, and is moved by what he hears and offers a gift. 2 golden robes of a very fine quality, the kind of cloth that has a particular sheen in the light, a warmth of color that is almost luminous. One robe is offered to the Buddha, one to Ananda. The teacher puts on the robe, and those standing nearby notice something. They notice that the robe, which is as beautiful a cloth as any of them have seen, looks somehow dim beside the quality of the face above it. The face has its own light, not metaphorically or not only metaphorically. The stillness, the clarity, the complete unscatteredness of a mind that has been practicing for 50 years, all of it visible in the face in a way that makes the finest cloth look ordinary. Ananda looks at this and begins to say something. The Buddha stops him gently. He says, there are 2 moments when this happens, Ananda, the night of the awakening and the night of the parinibbana. This is the second. Ananda hears this. He does not cover his face this time. He holds it. You have been here before in some way. Not on this road, not in this century, not carrying a robe that glows less brightly than the face above it, but in the specific quality of a moment when you understood. Not intellectually, but in your body, in your chest, a specific ache that understanding sometimes produces when it arrives whole and unavoidable, that something was ending, that a chapter was closing, that the road was taking you somewhere you could not go back from, and you kept walking anyway, because the road required it, because what is true requires witnessing, even when the witnessing is hard, because presence is not something you can offer only to the pleasant parts of a life. Presence, real presence, means staying when staying is the hardest thing. That is what Ananda is doing on this road. That is what you are doing on this road. The company walks. The flowers fall on. The light moves through the trees the way light always moves, without asking permission, without adjusting itself to what the people below it would prefer. The road goes north. And somewhere ahead, not far now, the sal trees are coming into bloom. Something ancient is speaking. There is a moment in every long journey, and you may have felt this if you have ever walked a very long way towards something you knew would change you. A moment when the destination becomes real in a way it was not before. Not visible yet, but real. Close enough that you can feel its weight on the road ahead of you the way you feel the presence of a large body of water before you can see it. The sal trees at Kushinagar are that presence now. We have been walking toward them since the first chapter of this walk, since the grove at Lumbini where flowers fell in the dark and a child drew his first breath. It's the moonlit road out of Kapilavastu where a horse's hooves made no sound. Since the morning star over the Niranjana river and the deer in the meadow at Isipatana and the dusty road outside Rajagaha where a monk was walking to breakfast and changed 2 lives with 4 lines. All of it has been walking toward Kushinagar, not because Kushinagar is the end. The teaching does not end at Kushinagar. The teaching is still moving in every direction and carried by everyone who has ever received it and lived it and passed it on. But the walk, this specific walk with this specific teacher on this specific road, the walk ends at the sal trees, and the sal trees are close. If something in you is not ready for what comes next, rest here. The road will wait. The next mile will be here when you are. Take a breath, let the flowers fall around you. Let Ananda's steadiness on the road ahead of you be something you can lean on for a moment. The way you lean on the steadiness of a person you trust when your own legs are tired. He is carrying this too. He has been carrying it since Vaishali, since the third look back at the city, since the hand that covered his face and then came down again and let the road continue. He is still walking. So are you. The sal trees are just ahead. Chapter 13, the sal trees. Kushinagar, the final night. You have walked a long road, now you are here. The sal trees are in full bloom. This is the detail that the Mahaparinibbana Sutta preserves with a care that feels almost like tenderness. Not the death, not the doctrine, not the careful enumeration of what was said and by whom in what order, but this. The sal trees were in bloom. Out of season, not because anyone asked them to, not because the calendar said it was time, because something in the world, in the particular, unrepeatable world of this night, in this grove, on the outskirts of this small town that would not otherwise be remembered, something asked the trees to bloom, and the trees bloomed, white flowers, falling slowly, landing without sound on the ground below. You have been here before. At the very beginning of this walk in a grove at Lumbini, flowers fell from sal trees in the dark while a woman named Maya held a branch and a child drew his first breath. And the world began with falling flowers. And now, 80 years later, at the end of a life that walked every road it was given and taught everyone who came to it and held nothing back, the world is ending with falling flowers too. This is not an accident. The grove at Kushinagar is not large. The sal trees grow in pairs here, twin trees standing close together, their canopies touching overhead. The Buddha has asked to be laid between 2 of these twin trees, on a bed prepared with his head to the north, his face to the west, toward the direction of the setting sun. The monks have prepared the bed. The robe is laid carefully. He lies down in the lion's posture, on his right side, one hand beneath his cheek, the leg slightly bent. And this too is preserved in the tradition with the specificity of people who understood they were witnessing something that needed to be remembered exactly. And the trees above him are flowering. The white blossoms fall onto the robe, onto the ground, into the hair of the monk sitting nearby. The grove smells of something that has no name, or rather, that has too many names and too many traditions to settle on any one of them, something between incense and rain, and the particular sweetness of flowers that bloom because they have been asked to, and not because it is their season. And here is the master open loop resolved. The sal tree at the edge of the world, the one we have been walking toward since the very first night of this walk, since the flowers fell in the dark at Lumbini and we said, we will reach it, but not yet. We are here now. Hold this image gently. Ananda is outside the grove. He has excused himself or been excused, the accounts vary, and he is standing at the edge of the trees, his back against the rough bark of a sal tree that is not one of the twin trees, a tree at the margin, and he is weeping, not quietly, not with any particular dignity, and weeping the way a person weeps when they have held something in for longer than holding in is sustainable, and the holding gives way all at once, the way a dam gives way, not gradually but completely, the whole structure failing at once. He has not attained full awakening. Of all the people in this tradition who were close to the teacher, then Ananda is the one who has heard the most and understood the most and practiced the most and still has not crossed the threshold. He is a sotapanna, a stream enterer, moving toward the sea at his own pace, a pace that the proximity to the teacher has shaped and also perhaps slowed, because when the answer you need is standing next to you every day, there is a way in which you stop needing to find it in yourself. He weeps beside the tree, and the teacher from inside the grove asks, "Where is Ananda?" He is told. He asks for Ananda to come. Pay attention to this, because what the Buddha says to Ananda in this moment is not a farewell, and it is not a consolation designed to ease the grief. It is something more demanding and more loving than either of those. It is the truth offered at the moment when the truth is most necessary and most difficult to receive. He says, "Not grieve, Ananda. Do not weep. Have I not taught from the beginning that all things that are dear to us must change, must separate, must pass? How could this be otherwise? What is born, what comes into being, what is conditioned, this carries within it the nature of ending. To ask that it not end is to ask that the nature of things be different from what it is." He pauses, and then he says something else, and something that has been waiting in this tradition for 25 centuries for exactly the right moment to land, and is landing now in this grove, with the flowers falling and the night very still. He says, "You have served with love and care and devotion for a very long time. You have done well, Ananda. Now you must find it in yourself, the island, the refuge." The thing he told Ananda on the road after the rain's retreat at Vaishali. Be your own island, said again now, from a bed between two flowering trees, with the specific weight of a last time. Ananda sits down. He does not speak. There is nothing to say. There is only being here, being present to this, which is, in the end, all that has ever been asked. Something ancient is speaking. The night deepens. The town of Kushinagar is quiet. It is not a large town. The Malas who live here are proud of their territory but realistic about its scale, and by this hour most of it is asleep. A few lamps visible from the grove, the sound of an animal somewhere in the dark. River nearby, moving in the way rivers move at night, which is more audible than in the day, as if the dark gives the water permission to be louder. And then a figure appears at the edge of the grove, an old man, wanderer. One of the many wanderers who crisscross this ancient land at every hour, moving between teachers and teachings, and the particular restlessness of someone who has not yet found what they are looking for. His name is Subhada. He has questions. He has had questions for a long time, and he has brought them to many teachers. And the teachers have answered with varying degrees of confidence, and he has always left with the sense that the answer was slightly to the left or right of where they were pointing. He has heard that there is a teacher dying in the grove outside Kushinagar, and he has walked through the night to reach him. Ananda tries to turn him away, not from unkindness, from the specific protective instinct of someone who loves a person and does not want that person's final hours filled with the demands of strangers. The teacher is tired. The teacher is ill. This is not the time. The teacher hears. He calls out, "Let him come." The road opens. Siddhartha comes. He sits. He asks his question, which is in its essence the same question that has driven every person on this entire walk. I'm Siddhartha under the rose apple tree to Kisa Gautami, through the city to Angulimala in the forest. Not phrased the same way, but the same question underneath all the different phrasings. Is there a way through this? Is there something on the other side of the suffering that conditioned existence produces? Is there a path? And if so, where does it go and how do I walk it? The teacher answers. From his bed between the flowering sal trees, the last hours of his last night, he teaches Siddhartha the same teaching, the noble eightfold path, the direction of practice, the way of living that leads toward the end of unnecessary suffering. He teaches it with the same unhurried clarity he brought to the deer park 50 years ago, when 5 men sat in the grass and listened, and one of them had the look on his face that changed everything. Siddhartha understands. He asks to be ordained. He becomes the last person the Buddha personally ordains. The last, not the best, not the most advanced, not the most famous, the last. And a wanderer who walked through the night with questions he could not put down, who was almost turned away at the grove's edge, who was let in because the teacher, even now, even here, could not teach. This is where the teaching begins, not ends. The night moves past midnight. The monks sit in the grove. Ananda sits near the bed. The flowers continue to fall, slowly, unhurried, the way flowers fall when there is no wind and no urgency and the world has decided to be still. Mara comes, not as armies or storms or beautiful temptations, as a voice, the same voice that came at the Bodhi Tree, on the same fundamental pull of the familiar, the same deep human wish that things could be other than they are. The voice says, "You have taught enough? You have given enough. The Sangha is established. The teaching is moving in the world. You have done what you came to do. You can let go now." And this time, unlike at the Bodhi Tree where the voice was a resistance to be seen through, this time the voice is not wrong. Let go, not all at once. The texts describe it as a process, a movement through successive states of meditative absorption. First, second, third, fourth jhana, then the formless states beyond, and then back, and descending through the states again, and then rising once more to the fourth jhana. And at the boundary of the fourth jhana, in the stillness that the tradition calls the place of neither movement nor stopping, the breathing ceases. The sal trees are still blooming. The flowers are still falling. And here the tradition records one of the most honest sentences in the entire archive of this story. Ananda says to the monk sitting next to him, "The Blessed One has passed," and the monk, Anuruddha, a monk of deep practice and deep equanimity, says, "No, Ananda, he has entered the fourth jhana. He has not yet passed," and then a moment later, "Now he is." And this distinction between the fourth jhana and the final passing, between the deepest meditation and the final extinguishing, this distinction matters to the tradition because it says something about the nature of what happened. This was not a collapse. This was not a failure of the body overwhelming an unprepared mind. This was a mind moving through its own depths with full awareness and full intention, and choosing in full clarity, in full presence, to release the last conditions of conditioned existence. He did not die the way most people die. He died the way he lived, in samadhi, gathered, collected. Here, let that settle. Now, there is a question that this moment asks of you, not a philosophical question, not a question about doctrine or cosmology, or the precise metaphysics of what happens after the parinibbana. A simpler question, not the question that sitting beside any deathbed eventually asks, if you sit long enough and honestly enough, what would it mean to live the way he died? Not the meditation, or not only the meditation, the quality of it, the gatheredness, the note being scattered by the circumstances, the mind that does not abandon its clarity when the body abandons its comfort. The presence that does not require pleasant conditions to be present. And this is not something that most of us achieve at the moment of death. It is something that most of us are only beginning to approach in the best moments of our ordinary days, in the moments when we are genuinely here, genuinely attending, genuinely present to what is in front of us without the overlay of what we wish were in front of us. But those moments are real. And they are made of the same substance as what happened between the flowering sal trees at Kushinagar. Diluted, yes. Imperfect, yes. But the same direction, the same quality, the same reaching of the mind for its own deepest nature. You have had those moments. You are perhaps in one now. There is one more thing. Think of the last time you sat beside someone who was very ill, or very old, or very close to the end of something. Think of what you could not do in that room. You could not fix it, could not reverse it, could not make the body well or the situation different or the outcome other than what it was. Think of what you could do. You could be there. You could be present. You could offer the specific and irreplaceable gift of your actual attention, not your managed attention, not your useful, task-oriented, problem-solving attention, but your simple, unguarded, not honestly given presence. That was enough. It is always enough. Not because it changes the outcome. It never changes the outcome. But because the outcome is not the only thing that matters in a room where someone is dying. And what matters in that room is whether the person dying knows they are not alone. Whether the quality of the attention in the room says, without words, because some things are only said without words, I see you. I am not afraid of this. I am not going anywhere. The Buddha knew he was not alone. Ananda was there. The monks were there. Subha, the newly ordained, was there. The flowers were there. The trees were there. The river was there, moving quietly in the dark. This is the strongest kind of love, the kind that does not look away, that does not fill the silence with reassurance, that sits in the actual dark of an actual grove on an actual night and is simply, completely unreservedly there. This is Mahaparinibbana, the great extinguishing, the final release of everything that was held, everything that was conditioned, everything that arose from causes and will cease when the causes cease. No. And what remains? The tradition has many answers to this question, and none of them are fully satisfying in the way that we want answers to be satisfying. Complete, definitive, closing the question. The tradition knows this, and the Buddha himself, when asked directly about what happens after the parinibbana, consistently declined to answer, not from evasion, from honesty. Because the question is asked from inside conditioned existence and using the categories of conditioned existence, and the answer, if there is one, is not accessible from inside those categories. What he would say is this: the fire that has been extinguished, where has it gone? It has not gone north, it has not gone south, it has not gone east or west, it has not gone up or down, it has simply ceased to burn. And the wood and the heat and the fuel that sustained it, these have ceased to be gathered together in the way that produced the burning. They have returned to what they were before the burning, which is not nothing. It is simply not burning. This is nibbana, not a place, not an absence, the end of the burning. The sal trees bloom on, the flowers fall, the night is very still. Ananda, who will not sleep tonight, who will sit at the edge of the grove until the darkness begins to thin and the birds begin their first cautious notes. Ananda holds the name that is also the quality. Ananda means bliss. He was given this name at birth and has spent his whole life in the proximity of the most remarkable person he has ever known, and has not yet, not quite yet, fully understood what the name was pointing him toward. He will understand before morning, but that is the last door, and some doors open only when the teacher is no longer there to open them for you. This is not an ending. This is not a loss. This is not a farewell. This is the teaching, complete, in the only form that any teaching can be complete, which is the form of a life that was lived all the way through, that held nothing back, that gave everything it had to give to everyone who came to it, and then, in full awareness and full clarity, let go. The flowers fall. The grove is very still. You have walked the whole road now. Chapter 14. What the Road Left Behind. After the passing, the world did not go quiet. It went wider. This is what happens when something real moves through the world. Not the quiet of an ending, the expansion of a beginning. The sal trees at Kushinagar were still blooming when the news began to travel, moving out from the grove in every direction along the trade roads and river routes and footpaths of the ancient subcontinent, not carried by monks and merchants and wanderers and the particular human urgency that attaches itself to news that changes the shape of things. The teacher has died, the teaching has not. The Mala people of Kushinagar, the clan in whose territory the grove stands, come in the morning. They come with flowers and incense and the specific reverence of people who understand immediately and without being told that something has happened in their town, that their town will be remembered for long after everything else about it has been forgotten. They honor the body for 7 days. They cremate it with ceremony and care, the way the tradition prescribes for a great being, a Chakravartin, a wheel-turning king, though the wheel he turned was not a wheel of territory but of Dhamma, and then the relics, the bone fragments that remain after the cremation, small, white, the color of jasmine flowers in the accounts, the color of things that have been through fire and come out the other side, changed but not destroyed. These become immediately the most significant objects in the known world, not because anyone has decided to make them significant, because the people who loved the teaching and lived by it and built their lives around it are going to need something to gather around, now that the person who embodied the teaching is no longer walking the roads. Pay attention to this. 8 kings send delegations to Kushinagar. 8 different kingdoms, 8 different royal families, each with their own claim to the relics, each with their own monks and their own communities and their own genuine grief. The Malas of Kushinagar want to keep everything. Nagadhans come on behalf of King Ajatasattu, Bimbisara's son, a king with a complicated history and a genuine devotion to the teaching. The Likshavis of Vaishali send representatives. The Shakyas of Kapilavastu, the clan of the Buddha's own family, send their claim for the relics of their most famous son. 7 more kingdoms with 7 more claims. The negotiation that follows is, in its essence, very human. Grief makes people territorial. Love makes people want to hold on to what they love, to keep it close, to not share it with people who loved it differently or from farther away or with different ceremonies. Delegations stand outside the walls of Kushinagar, and each of them is in its own way saying, "He was ours. Give us what is ours." Something is shifting beneath the surface, and a Brahmin named Dona, wise in the specific way of people who can see the shape of a moment clearly while everyone else is still inside it, steps forward. He climbs onto the funeral pyre and addresses the assembled delegations. He says something that is simple and true and that the situation desperately needs someone to say. He says, "The teacher taught nonviolence. It would be a contradiction. A particular, not painful contradiction, if his relics were to become the occasion for violence between those who loved him. Let the relics be divided. 8 portions, 1 for each kingdom. 8 stupas, 8 gathering places. 8 locations where people can come and sit and remember and practice and pass the teaching on." The delegations agree, not without difficulty, not without the particular reluctance of grief giving up what it wants to hold exclusively. But they agree. The relics are divided, 8 portions, and distributed with the careful ceremony of people who understand they are handling something irreplaceable. The urn itself, the vessel that held the relics during the negotiations, is given to Dona as his share. The embers from the funeral pyre go to a 9th group who arrive too late for the main division. 8 stupas rise across the subcontinent, gathering places. The dhatu, the relics, the elements, the physical remainder of a physical life become the centers around which communities gather, practice, teach, and pass the teaching on. This is where the road bends. 250 years pass. No, the world changes in those 250 years in ways that nobody standing outside the walls of Kushinagar with their claim to the relics could have predicted. kingdoms rise and fall. The great Persian Empire to the northwest, which seemed permanent in the way that only very large things seem permanent, is swept away by a Macedonian general named Alexander, who marches east with an army that changes the shape of the known world and then dies young in Babylon before he can consolidate what he has changed. The subcontinent reorganizes itself. New dynasty, the Mauryas, rises in Magadha, the kingdom of King Bimbisara, and grows outward until it covers most of the subcontinent and some of what lies beyond. Its third emperor is a man named Ashoka. You have met him already briefly in the mango grove at Vaishali, standing on a battlefield in Kalinga with something broken open in his chest, looking at what his ambition had made. He is here again now, in a different form. Not the king who wept over the battlefield, the king who did something with the weeping. There is one more thing. He made a pilgrimage. Not the pilgrimage of a conqueror visiting his territories. A pilgrimage of the specific, humble, searching kind that asks something of the person making it, requires something, changes something. He walked to the places where the teaching had been lived. He walked to Lumbini, where he stood in the grove that Faxian would describe centuries later, where you stood at the beginning of this walk, and he wept, not from performance, from the recognition of someone who had finally, after a very long time and a very high cost, understood what he had been looking for all along. He had a pillar erected. In the Brahmi script of his time, in the language of governance and decree, he wrote, "Here the Buddha was born," and he reduced the land tax on Lumbini in acknowledgement, a practical kindness, the kind that a person in power offers when they want to do something real rather than merely symbolic. He went to Bodh Gaya, to Sarnath, to Isipatana, a deer park where he built a stupa over the site of the first teaching, to Kushinagar where the grove still stood and the sisal trees still grew and the world was still in some quality that persists in certain places long after the event that created it, charged with what had happened there. Here is what the history books leave out. He carried all of this back into his governance, not as religion in the sense of enforced doctrine, as Dhamma in the sense of the practical orientation of a life, toward non-harm, toward care for the vulnerable, toward the honest acknowledgement of what suffering is and what creates it and what might reduce it. He carved it into stone because he understood that carved stone outlasts good intentions, that the structures we build are more durable than the moods that inspire them, that if you want something to continue after you are gone, you have to give it a form that can carry it forward without you. The rock edicts, not the pillar edicts, scattered across the subcontinent, some of them still legible today, the Brahmi script slowly yielding its meaning to the scholars who have spent lifetimes learning to read it. In one edict, he describes the Dhamma simply, the way you describe something you have actually lived rather than something you have merely been told. It is good to have few wants, to have virtue, to be gentle, to be grateful. Have firm devotion. Few wants, virtue, gentleness, gratitude, devotion. 5 qualities, not a cosmology, not a metaphysical system. 5 qualities that a person can practice on any road, in any century, in any circumstance. Notice what you feel right now, because what Ashoka is describing, in stone in the 3rd century before the Common Era, from the throne of the largest empire the subcontinent had yet seen, is the same thing that a monk named Asaji communicated to a young man on a dusty road outside Rajagaha by simply walking, and the same thing that the Buddha communicated to Angulimala by walking toward him instead of away. The same thing that the sal trees at Kushinagar communicated by blooming out of season in the dark. The teaching does not require a throne to stand on. It does not require an empire to carry it. It has been carried across 25 centuries by monks and nuns and merchants, farmers and scholars and wanderers and children who heard a story and kept it and passed it on. By Faxian, walking over mountains from China with nothing but a determination to see the places where the teaching had been lived. By Xuanzang, a century and a half later, making the same journey and finding the same places. A little more overgrown, a little more weathered, but still there, still charged with the quality of what had happened in them. The physical sites diminished. Some were buried under centuries of sediment, nunned. Some were lost entirely and rediscovered only in the 19th and 20th centuries by archaeologists whose excavations turned up the stone pillars and the inscriptions and the bone relics in the ancient stupas. Still where Dona's careful division had placed them 2,500 years before. The teaching did not diminish. Something ancient is speaking. It traveled to Sri Lanka with Mahinda, Ashoka's son, a monk, who carried the Dhamma south across the water and planted it in a soil where it would grow into one of the most vibrant Theravada traditions in the world. It traveled west to Greece and Egypt, where Ashoka's edicts mention missionaries sent to the courts of the Greek kings. It traveled north to Kashmir in Central Asia. It traveled east along the Silk Road into China, into Korea, into Japan, changing shape as it traveled the way all living things change shape in new conditions, while retaining the essential quality that makes them what they are. Nagarjuna in the 2nd century of the Common Era sat with the teaching and found in it depths that the Pali Canon had not yet named, and wrote verses so precise and so difficult that scholars are still arguing about what exactly they mean, and they are still worth arguing about. Bodhidharma carried something across the mountains into China in the 5th or 6th century and sat facing a wall for 9 years, and from that sitting came Chan Buddhism, which became Zen, which became a tradition of such concentrated practical intensity that it changed every culture it entered. Thich Nhat Hanh walked out of a country torn apart by war and carried the teaching into the West in a form that could be understood by people who had never heard of the Pali Canon and who were carrying their own particular varieties of modern suffering, the suffering of disconnection, of speed, of a world that has made itself too complicated to inhabit with any genuine peace. The road did not stop at Kushinagar. The road does not stop. This is where the teaching begins, not ends, because here is the thing about nibbana, the extinguishing, the end of the burning, that is most easily misunderstood. The flame that went out in the grove at Kushinagar was not the Dhamma. The Dhamma is not a flame in the same sense. The Dhamma is more like the understanding of fire, the knowing of what fire is and what feeds it and what it costs and what is possible when it is not burning. That understanding does not extinguish. It passes from mind to mind the way understanding always passes, not by transmission, not by inheritance, not by the simple fact of proximity, but by the same process that happened on a dusty road outside Rajagaha when a monk was walking to breakfast, and something in the quality of his walk spoke to something in a young man who had been waiting his whole life to receive it. And you are on that road now. Not met if you are tonight. Whatever room, whatever city, whatever country, whatever century's particular version of the same ancient questions, you are on that road. The road that goes from the palace to the river, from the forest to the tree, from the first words at Deer Park to the last words between the sal trees. You are walking it. The teacher is not walking it with you in the form you have been walking it with him tonight. But the teaching is, the Dhamma is, Sangha is, all the people who have walked this road before you and left something of the walking in the road itself, some quality of attention and care and honest seeking that accumulates in a tradition the way water accumulates in an aquifer, invisible but present, available when you dig for it. Dig for it. The relics are still in the ground in some of those 8 places, found by archaeologists in the 19th century in a relic casket with an inscription confirming what they were, still the color of jasmine flowers after 2,500 years in the earth. The pillar at Lumbini is still standing. The Bodhi Tree at Bodh Gaya, not the original tree, but a direct descendant of the original, not grown from a cutting taken to Sri Lanka by Ashoka's daughter Sangamita and brought back, is still standing. The deer still graze in the park at Sarnath. The sal trees at Kushinagar still bloom in their season. The road is still there. It passes through every place where someone has sat down and decided to be honest about what they are carrying. And it passes through every room where someone has stopped running long enough to feel what is actually present. It passes through every conversation where someone has offered their genuine attention instead of their managed attention, their actual presence instead of the performance of presence. It passes through you right now, in this breath. This is what the road left behind, not the relics, though the relics are beautiful. And the pillar at Lumbini is beautiful, and the Bodhi Tree is beautiful, and beauty matters. Not the philosophy, though the philosophy is extraordinary, and 25 centuries of extraordinary minds have only begun to exhaust its depths. And not even the institutions, though the institutions have carried the teaching across continents and centuries in ways that nothing else could have. What the road left behind is simpler than all of that and more durable, more available. A direction, a turning toward, the specific, practical, daily, undramatic orientation of a mind that has decided, not once, not in a single dramatic moment of conversion, but again and again, the ordinary moments of an ordinary day, to stop adding to the chain of causes that create unnecessary suffering, to look clearly at what is, to meet what is with something other than craving or aversion. Be as much as possible, as often as possible, in as many moments as possible. Here, just here. The road is here. The teaching is here. Not the flowering trees and the river and the long flat sky of the Gangetic plain and the dust on the road and the sound of a monk walking to breakfast and the face of a man who has been through everything and come out the other side with his eyes open. All of it is here, available, closer than you think. You have walked the whole road now. Rest here for a moment before the last mile. The outro is not far. The road is almost complete now, and the breath you are breathing right now, slow and easy and present, is the beginning of what comes next. Chapter 15. The road is still there. You have walked the whole road now. From the grove at Lumbini to the sal trees at Kushinagar, from the first breath of a child in the dark to the last breath of a teacher between flowering trees. On. From the rose apple tree where a 7-year-old boy sat still long enough to notice something most people spend their whole lives running past, to the stone pillars of Ashoka still standing in the fields of South Asia, still carrying their quiet inscription into the present. You have walked every road he walked. You have sat in the deer park when the teaching was first spoken. You have stood on the dusty road outside Rajagaha when 4 lines changed 2 lives. You have been in the grove at Vaishali when a man turned to look back at a city for the last time and Ananda covered his face. You have been here for all of it, and now the walk is ending. Not because the road ends, but because this particular telling of it has come to its final mile. The final mile asks something different of you than the miles before it. The miles before asked you to walk and watch and feel. This mile asks you to stop, to sit, to take 3 things with you when you rise. The road is still there. Let that settle. The first thing, every person on this road was carrying something. Not metaphorically, actually. Kisa Gautami was carrying a dead child. Atakara was carrying the loss of everything she had loved. Angulimala was carrying 999 reasons to believe he was beyond the reach of the teaching. Nanda was carrying 25 years of devotion and the grief of watching what that devotion was devoted to begin to leave. And every single one of them was met exactly where they were, not where it would have been convenient for the teacher to meet them. Not where the teaching would have been easier to deliver, where they actually were, in a city, in a forest, on a road, at the edge of a grove at night, weeping beside a tree. The teaching did not ask them to become different people before it would apply to them. It asked them to look honestly at who they already were and what they were already carrying and to take one step, not from that exact place, in the direction of less suffering. One step from where you are, not from where you think you should be, not from where you were last year or where you hope to be by now. From here, this breath, this room, this particular version of the ancient question that you are carrying in your own way on your own road. The teaching begins where you are. It has always begun where you are. This is what the mustard seed was teaching Kisa Gautami. Not that her suffering was ordinary or unimportant, but that it was shared. That the ground of her grief was also the ground of every other grief in every other house in the city, and that this shared ground is not a diminishment of her particular loss, but a bridge on. A bridge from the isolation of private suffering to the vast compassionate recognition that this loss, this impermanence, this ache of things that will not hold still, this is the human condition, not a personal failure. You are not carrying your particular grief because something went wrong with you. You are carrying it because you are alive, and alive means impermanent, and impermanent means that the things you love will change, and the people you love will go, and the self you have built will shift, and the world you have arranged will rearrange itself on its own schedule regardless of yours. This is not bad news. This is the first honest news. And honest news, unlike comfortable news, actually helps. Hold this image gently. The second thing, the walk itself is the practice, not the destination, not the arrival at some permanent, unshakable state of peace that sits at the end of the road like a prize for having walked it correctly. The walking, the quality of attention you bring to this step right now on this road, this moment. Siddhartha walked every road he walked with the same quality of attention he brought to the seat beneath the Bodhi tree, not because he was performing equanimity, and because equanimity is not a performance. It is what the mind settles into when it stops being pulled by craving and pushed by aversion, when it stops insisting that the road be different from what the road is. Monks at Isipatana walked into their day. Asaji walked to his breakfast. Ambapali tended her grove. Mahapajapati walked barefoot on a road without sandals and arrived where she needed to arrive. None of them were waiting for the conditions to improve before they practiced. The conditions were the practice. The road was the practice. Your road is the practice, not the meditation cushion. Or not only the meditation cushion, a conversation you will have tomorrow that you have been avoiding, the grief you have been managing from a distance instead of feeling from up close, the small, daily, undramatic choice to be present to the person in front of you instead of the screen in your hand or the thought in your head or the version of this moment you wish were happening instead of the one that is. The practice is available right now, in this breath, in the quality of attention you bring to this moment of rest, this moment of listening, this moment of being still in the dark while a road unfolds in your mind that was walked 25 centuries ago by a person whose question was the same as yours. What is this? What is the nature of this? None. Is there a way through it that does not require looking away? There is. The road is the answer. Walking it honestly is the answer. Not arriving at the end of it, walking it. One step, then the next, with as much presence and as little flinching as you can bring to it on any given day. Some days you will bring very little. The teaching knows this. The teaching was given to humans, not to ideals of humans. No, it accounts for the days when the string is pulled too tight, and the days when it goes slack, and the days when you forget completely that you are carrying an instrument at all. On those days, come back. The road is still there. It is always still there. Whenever you return to it, the road receives you exactly where you are, the way every road receives every traveler, without judgment, without record of the detours, with nothing but the direction it was always going. Something ancient is speaking. The third thing, the road passes through you, not past you. Through you. Not the teaching that began in a grove at Lumbini and was spoken in a deer park and walked across the subcontinent for 50 years and carved into stone by a king who needed to make it durable and carried across oceans and mountains and centuries by monks and scholars and ordinary people who found in it something that helped them live. This teaching right now is passing through you. Not because you have memorized it, not because you have sat in formal practice for years or read the suttas or can explain the 4 jhanas or the dependent origination or the precise metaphysics of anatta, because you have been walking this road tonight and because something in you recognized something in it. Because the question you have been carrying, whatever form your question takes, whatever weight it has in your particular life, is the same question that started this whole walk. What is this? Is there a way through it? And the road has said, yes, this is the way. Not easy, not instant, not a guarantee against further suffering, but real, honest, available, walked successfully by humans, by actual humans, and imperfect and grieving and sometimes completely lost for 25 centuries and counting. The road passes through you now. You carry it forward, whether you intend to or not, in the quality of your attention tomorrow, in the way you meet the people around you, with the managed, defended version of yourself, or with something more honest and more open, closer to the person who sat still in the dark tonight and let an ancient road unfold, the way you walk your own morning, your own road, your own version of the long, dusty, beautiful, difficult walk from wherever you started to wherever you are going. This is sati, mindfulness, remembrance, a quality of not forgetting what you know, not forgetting the clearing under the tree quality that is available in every moment if you stop adding noise to it, not forgetting that the road is still there, that the teaching is still moving, that the Brahma Viharas, the 4 divine abodes, the 4 qualities of a mind that has found its home, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity. These are not achievements to be reached at the end of a long practice. They are directions to turn toward. Available now, available here. Loving kindness first, not for others first, for yourself first, a way the teaching insists, because the compassion that burns out is the compassion that forgot to include the person offering it. Love yourself the way you would love someone you care about who is carrying something hard, and with patience, without the demand that they already be further along the road than they are. Then let it spread. The way warmth spreads from the center outward, the people you love easily, the people you find difficult, the people you do not know and will never meet, all of it, the whole breathing, impermanent, beautiful, suffering world. This is the last gift the road gives, not knowledge, not certainty, not the permanent, unshakable peace that we hoped was waiting at the end. Something better than all of those, a direction, a way of walking. A quality of presence that can be brought to any road, any day, any version of the ancient question. And before you sleep, or as sleep comes for you gently, the way sleep comes when the mind has been honest and the body has been still, let one question sit with you. Not a question that demands an answer tonight, a question to carry. And which moment on this road stayed with you? Which person looked up from the dust of an ancient road and you recognized something in their face, something that had also been in yours at some point, in some version of the same stretch of road? Tell me when you wake. I would like to know. And now, not the grove at Kushinagar, though that grove is always available, always blooming in the particular way of places that have held something extraordinary and have been holding it ever since. The grove at Lumbini. The very beginning. The sky is still dark. The sal trees are still. The air still carries the smell of rain and flowers, and the particular coolness of an hour that has not yet decided to become morning. A woman named Maya is resting against smooth bark, her face composed in the expression of someone who has just been through something immense and come out the other side with unexpected calm. And somewhere in the grass, in the soft, wet, moonlit grass of a grove at the edge of the foothills of the Himalayas in the 5th century before the Common Era, a child is breathing, small and new and breathing. The sal trees are in bloom, the flowers are falling. The world is very still. And somewhere between the first breath in this grove and the last breath in that other grove, a road unfolded. Every mile of it walked honestly. Every person on it met with full attention. Every question received and answered with the same quality of presence that the morning star found when it rose over the Niranjana River on the most important dawn in the history of this tradition. The road is still there. You have walked it. Now rest. The breath that is in you right now, slow it just slightly. Let the body settle a little more into whatever is beneath you. Let the thoughts that are still moving find their own quiet, the way water finds its own level when it is left alone. You do not need to hold on to anything from this walk. The walk has already given you what it has to give. It is in you now, known, the way a road is in the body of a traveler even after the traveling is done. In the legs, in the steadiness, in the particular quality of someone who has walked a long way and arrived somewhere real. Sleep now, Nud. The road is still there. It will be there in the morning, and the morning, as it always does, as it has done since the first morning of the world, the morning is coming.